Hey,
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our live stream. We have a fortnightly program here where we run every Sunday morning, and we invite people to join us on our panel on our Discord stage to convince us that one or more deities exist. So we're here with our panel, who I'm going to introduce now. We start off with Amy Newman. She's known for her trademark slogan, Sending Love. She's a professional comedian and skeptic who hosts debates, interviews, and conversations on her YouTube channel. She also creates educational and other important content. Her YouTube channel is at youtube.com/Amy Newman. TJump, or TJump, is an atheist philosopher who hosts conversations with professors, philosophers, and other academics about topics ranging from biology and physics to religion and morality and so on. TJump's YouTube channel is at youtube.com/TJump. JMike is one of the co-hosts of the Talk Heathen show, and he joins us from time to time as well. Jefferson Spatchcock is an atheist inquisitor and intellectual who has particular expertise in analyzing and reviewing debates. His YouTube channel is available in the YouTube video description. J.L. Warren is an atheist activist, educator, and entertainer. He runs the Bridge the Divide YouTube channel, where he addresses irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, the societal divides they create, and how those divides can be bridged with education, rationality, and reason. His YouTube channel is at youtube.com/JLWarren. I'm Randolph Richardson, an atheist from British Columbia, Canada. I'm the founding president of the Canadian Atheists, and I'm an advocate for freedom, fair justice, and critical thinking. You can find out more about the Canadian Atheists at canadianatheists.ca, that's the website, and my YouTube channel is at youtube.com/Randolph Richardson. IX is a Tom Unboxes subscriber and former atheist community of Discord admin who enjoys long walks through evolutionary biology-inspired computer science, archaeological, academic, biblical criticism, and so on. Jack Burton is a self-described middle-aged, college-educated nobody who drives the Pork Chop Express truck in his spare time. He's a deist and mostly non-committal to philosophical stances. Peter de Tucker is an atheist from the Netherlands who handles the production of various YouTube channels, including Aaron Ra's channel, and generously contributes his professional artistic skills for free to atheists all around the world. His YouTube channel is at youtube.com/gonna go for it. Taco, our organizer, is a #1 Discord debater who has never lost a Discord debate in his life. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you to everybody on the panel for being here. Did anybody have any burning points you wanted to make before we started our program?
I think we should do intros last at the end when most people are here or to actually listen and potentially care. Intros at the beginning kind of waste because there's only like 10 people in the audience when we first start.
You can do it at the start and the finish. It's not a big deal. So we've got Prax Prat. I don't know how to say that, but he wants to come up and talk with us about there being a potential simulation that's not necessarily a god existing, right? But it sounds pretty interesting.
Hey guys.
Max Prea Pooty.
Good morning, Peter. So, I guess Pax might be a little busy at the moment. He was interested before the show started, so if that's the case, we could move on to another person.
Yeah.
Hello, Amy.
With him later.
Is Randolph cutting out for anybody every like 15 seconds or so?
A little bit. He's cutting out a little bit for me.
Oh, Tangelo, fix that. You need to go push to talk, man. I'm going to invite you back up. Make sure you're push to talk.
Thanks, TJump. Oh, it looked like Godless Girl is wanting to come up. Shall we bring her up?
Sure.
Good morning, Godless Girl. How are you?
Muted.
Yeah, your microphone's muted, as TJump just pointed out. How are you, godless girl? Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Okay, I guess.
You-
Oh,
Sorry, I
there we
couldn't
go.
figure out how to unmute.
Well, we can hear you now. How are you doing?
Okay, how are you guys?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, you're godless, which means you're not a theist. Did you have some perspective you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, well, I'm really critical of other atheists, though. I debate them more than I do theists.
Oh,
My ears perked up when I heard that Taco thinks he never lost a debate. Is that like just a joke, or is that true?
The
I
world
think
may
it's-
never know.
I think it's meant to be tongue in cheek. So,
No,
but
it's
otherwise,
completely legit, 100% factual, unquestionable, objective.
I thought
Once
Otherwise-
again,
I
the
thought-
world may never know.
otherwise, an
Well, that
atheist
was
challenging
true,
Taco
too.
on that is not really the purpose of the stage.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So how would you guys respond to somebody who is saying they were a deist, but it's not like rationally justified? They're just believing it because of some intuition.
If they're
that's
intellectually
fine.
honest about it, then there's not a problem.
So you wouldn't have an argument against it.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfalsifiable. So it's just, if they believe in it and they're holding to it as an emotional appeal, they're aware of that. They're intellectually honest about it, and they're not running around making assertions about reality that everybody else should believe in it. Then they're allowed to believe whatever they want to believe, just as long as they're intellectually honest about it. That's cool.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody would have, at least one of you would have some kind of objection to it. But just because something is unfalsifiable doesn't mean that you can have like an a priori argument against something.
well, I can tell you the objection I would have is if they're trying to impose those beliefs on others, and because I'm very much in favor of people having intellectual sovereignty, as I like to call it. So, but I don't think that really addresses your question, does it?
Well, I thought you guys would try to argue that somebody couldn't rationally hold that belief.
Well, it's irrational, yes, but
It's
as long as they're
irrational
aware,
or irrational.
it's irrational. It is not rational. It is irrational. So they can hold that. But you can hold an irrational position as long as you're aware that it's irrational, and you can accept that. If you're intellectually honest about it, then there shouldn't be a problem there.
I don't think it would be
Yeah,
irrational.
that's what I
so
would
it's-
want an argument for, because I don't think it's irrational. I think it's just irrational when you believe something because of an intuition in the absence of a defeater.
Right. So I think it'd only be irrational if they claimed to have evidence that they didn't, or something along those lines. If their beliefs were not proportional to the evidence that they claim to have. If they just choose to believe based off intuition and don't claim to have any evidence, then that's not irrational. They're just choosing to believe, and that's fine.
Okay, so TJump agrees with me, but JL Warren does not. He thinks it's irrational. Do you have an argument that it's irrational, JL?
It's not rational.
Yeah, it's irrational, like I said. Irrational with an A.
Okay, then it's irrational.
Oh, you're backpedaling.
I don't
would say
care.
it's irrational.
I don't care because this is not the purpose of the stage.
You don't care if you backpedal? Okay.
But I would just point out that there's no evidence that a mind can exist without a brain, and all the current evidence actually points to the fact that you need a brain, a physical, natural brain to have a mind.
It's not backpedaling,
So-
Godless. I'm just giving you what you want so you can go away.
Oh, okay. I don't have to be on stage if you don't want me here.
Cool.
I
Have a good
love
one.
everybody. Mwah.
All right, thanks for coming up. A friend of mine, Neil Spirits, is in the audience. I was PMing him here. I think he might want to come up. I'm going back and forth with him right now, but he has a lot of experiences with ghosts and spirits, so I think that would be a fun one if he'll come up.
Experience with ghosts and spirits. Now that's, I'm assuming that's not just Halloween.
Are we talking like Demi
I went to
Moore
Valley Fair with
experience,
them.
or are we talking Demi Moore experience, or are we talking like Ray Stantz experience?
I don't know exactly. That's why I'm saying I'd like to have him up here because that seems like a very, very interesting topic. I saw him on the audience, and he's got some cool graphs even.
The TJump, you recently were in a debate with Kent Hovind, as I understand. How do you think that went?
That was interesting. It was so close to like a really fun debate, but he kind of weaseled out of it because debate was testable predictions, and didn't really understand that in science, testable predictions isn't just literally predicting anything about the future. Like I could predict that in 5 seconds I'm going to pick my nose, and if that happens, clearly that's not evidence of anything in science. No one cares. What people care about in science is novel testable predictions, things that we don't know about yet. But he kind of evaded that
Oh,
topic as much as possible,
I
desperately.
I watched that debate, and so
Me too.
I was really curious, Tom. What did it say in the email that the title of the debate was? Because I know for a fact that you have to pin him down on a topic. If you don't do that meticulously, he's going to run away from it.
I didn't set it up,
Because
so that was Donnie Standing for Truth set it up, so I wasn't a part of that.
yeah, what confused me is that apparently there's a series and it's the same topic for every debate, according to Kent.
I'm surprised. I mean,
I don't think
TJump, did you get a chance to see McKinnon Mitchell's documentary on Hovind?
He literally said
maybe, I don't know.
that he wasn't required to defend his position.
Well, yeah, I don't think
So-
Kent has multiple debate strategies. He has one debate strategy and he just repeats the same strategy over and over again, no matter what you do with the title.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we just have brought up a guest, Zeet. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Welcome. How are you doing?
Right.
Zeit. Thank you for correcting me, Zeit. How are you doing today, Zeit?
No. Right. Starting with a T. Right. German.
Well,
Okay. It
German
has
for
disappeared.
he was
Well, thank
offended
you for
by
joining
your
us. Oh, he wants to come back.
I think it was his time.
And if anybody else would like to come chat with us, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you in the queue.
The water is fine.
Hello. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
What you got for us today?
You can begin your argument.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so
Or
we've
not.
got Jordan in queue, so we'll go ahead and chat with Jordan here. What's going on?
Good morning, Jordan.
Good morning to you guys as well.
Morning. What you got for us today?
I apologize if I'm not very experienced in this topic, but one of the arguments, although by philosophers is not really that many have found that convincing, one has been influential for me is like the moral argument for God. And the reason why I see it as convincing is because when I look at things like moral naturalism or moral particularism, I generally usually assume moral realism is like the default position that most people have, because we don't believe usually that morality is subjective, that there must be like some sort of explanation for that, and the way to account for that objectively would be a moral lawgiver, because it always seems really intuitive to me, like an objective moral law would need an objective moral lawgiver. And I know people would like to object, isn't that God's opinion? Well, if he is sovereign, then he would be the foundation of such principles. So just wondering what.
So
you
if there, yeah, so if there is an objective moral, then it should be independent of a mind, I would think. And so, what would justify classifying it as objective when it is issued by a deity who obviously has a mind, a god or a goddess? I'm wondering how you justify that, because it seems to me that like the laws of nature, laws of physics and whatnot seem to be just an emergent property of reality. And so and they're objective. So if the moral laws that you're talking about are, and maybe you can give an example of a moral law that would work for this, but I'm interested in seeing how it would be kind of an emergent property of reality, I guess, part of reality. It should be, I think, independent of there being any deities.
If I can add to that just a little bit. So I agree morality is subjective, but why not think morality being objective as a law of nature rather than a law given by a mind, like a law of legal system?
Thank you, TJump.
We also just to piggyback on that, we also understand that moral concepts being subjective to individuals, to groups, to societies, to nations, to the world in and of itself. That we understand that these things they derive from our empathy, from our ability to empathize with other people, formation of mirror neurons and the like. And of course, these are empathy and our ability to connect with the people, our ability to love. These were positively selected traits because they were they supported our survival. And so as human beings evolved over the past 2 million years, that we developed these, and because connecting or cooperative action and empathy would allow us to survive better than selfish action. And so we would typically ostracize those individuals that worked against the group. We'd kick them out, which means that they would not breed and spread those genes. And then those individuals who were more inclined to be empathetic with their fellow human beings were a part of the group. They passed their genes on. And so we artificially selected for our own empathy as we were protecting our group as a survival mechanism. And so, and from our ability to empathize with others is where morals stem from, is where these moral considerations stem from. So we understand this as a product of our evolution.
And instead of making a statement, I'll give it back over to you, Jordan, to answer it. But I do want to know afterwards just questions about hell, if we are going to talk about the moral argument. But feel free to respond to anything those three gentlemen said.
I apologize if I can't get to all your objections. They all seem like they're very worth considering. If I just don't remember them all. But if I were to just look at this in order of the people spoke, I think Randolph pointed out morality is an objective morality wouldn't seem like it would be dependent on a particular mind, and I think that there's some substance to that. And I think when I've talked to a lot of theists.
Sorry, can I just clarify? What I did say, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but what I did say was, it seems to me if it's going to be objective, it would be independent of a mind, is the wording that I used, like the laws of nature. So the moral laws would be the same thing, emergent properties of reality, regardless of whether there's a deity. And that's kind of what I was getting at.
Fair point. I'm sorry if I misrepresented you.
No problem, man. No problem.
Regardless of that, I think in my experience when I've asked this question, people usually ground the moral properties as like the essence of God or in his properties. So it's not just based on the minds, but on like the divine. They're often referred to as like transcendental categories or properties of God. And what I've experienced, people will usually ground that to say that, oh, well, it's not like he's making a decision. It's in his essence in which we can derive that these laws are given. And if I were to move on to, I think it was TJump.
Can I just quickly respond to that? Can we break the laws of physics? They seem to be consistent. We don't seem to be able to do that. We seem to have to be working within those laws. So, and they seem to be objective. If that's also the case, we have objective morality, then I would expect logically this to be the same. We would not be able to violate these moral laws, and yet people are violating what people consider to be moral laws, like not murdering other people, not stealing from people, not vandalizing property, and things like that.
Well, that's a good point. Though I think what I'm just going to appeal to a distinction David Hume made, is that there just seems to be a distinction when we look at the laws of physics between is claims when we're describing the world versus describing it ought. There seems to be a difference between the claims that someone is murdering another person versus you ought not murder that other person. They seem to be they're categorically different. So in that sense, it doesn't seem like you could derive a statement that's just a fact describing it versus those ought statements. So that's why I would probably just draw that sort of distinction, because how would you derive any sort of moral claim? Say that someone goes up and kills another man. How would you derive that is good or that is bad from just looking at the empirical facts about the situation?
In the science fiction story I'm writing, I've been working on this since the 1980s in my spare time. I'm working on a lot of things. There's one planet where there's a society of assassins where uh, killing people, killing other they're alien species, but I'll just call them people for simplicity. Killing other people is not considered to be immoral. There's certain situations where it's not acceptable, but most of the time it's something that can happen. They've got a huge overpopulation problem there. They multiply like rabbits, so this is part of the solution. So to me, this is the point of this is that there are circumstances where if we're going to use killing another person is actually moral. One thing I can think of is a mercy killing where somebody is suffering with a terminal illness that is only getting worse day by day and more painful for them, and they want euthanasia. So, in my view, it would be moral to kill that person because they're requesting it. And they obviously, and I think, and the reason I mention the terminal illness is just to kind of make it easier for people to consider this thought experiment. There are other situations where people are okay with capital punishment. Now, I'm opposed to capital punishment in its current forms. I think that I do have a suggestion for improving the situation, and I'll just mention this briefly. What it is, and I've written about this, is that with a better solution would be, if you still need capital punishment, to instead make it a life sentence with, after minimum time served, the convicted person can apply to a judge to get the death penalty. So that way it doesn't violate their personal bodily autonomy, and so their human rights would still be respected there. So to me, that would be an improvement. I think the whole problem with the incarceration is problematic, though, because a lot of the systems that are out there are punishment based and not rehabilitation focused, and as nearly as much as they should be. But these are, I guess I've covered a number of different examples where we've provided a number of different examples where there's a lot of different views on these subjects. Can you provide an example of an objective moral that that you think would be a good one to use as an example in this conversation?
So this is okay. I'll give one. That you should not treat some people as an end, as a means to an end. I think that will just resolve in some sort of like utilitarianism kind of thinking, where you just view people as a means to get some sort of utility or pleasure points, which I think can be kind of arbitrary if you line it up. At least that's what I'm inclined to think. So I think that objective moral law or maxim could be formulated as you should treat people as ends in themselves, because they're all products of like rational decision makers.
That actually brings up a good way to me to ask questions like, first, do you believe in a hell?
I'm curious. Presently, I don't know, to be honest.
I wanted to go
It's
back
tricky.
to Randolph brought up a really good point that I kind of like rephrased it when I was talking this. If we agree morality is objective, objective meaning it's not up to our opinions, the things that we know of that are objective are like laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, weak, strong nuclear forces. Those are objective facts. And so if morality is objective, it seems to make more sense that it's going to be like one of those things, a law of physics, rather than a thing determined by a mind, like a God-based morality. So why would we think we agree morality is objective? Wouldn't it make more sense that it's going to be one of like the law things, gravity, more than like a law of legal system, like a God-based, God says it kind of a thing?
Well, here's the thing, though. I do treat it as like those laws of physics, and I'm not saying that of it being objective, that it's purely based off of like a will of God. It's in his very nature, not just a decision. Otherwise, you get problems like the Euthyphro problem. I can't pronounce that right, but
The
basically,
Euthyphro dilemma.
yeah. That's how you pronounce it. Anyway, you get situations like that in which it seems like morality could be construed as morally arbitrary. So it seems to me that you would have to phrase morality as a sort of objective, like nature of God, in order to avoid those problems. Is not just dependent on mind; it's about the facts of God's nature.
Well,
Yeah,
wouldn't
but-
it just be better explained without the God part? Just say it's a nature of reality, like a law of physics. Why do you need why is the God part even included in that sentence?
Well, it's because it's contingent upon his existence, um, within his nature, and
But Jordan, so just to clarify, just make sure I'm all caught up on your position, is that you're asserting that there is an objective morality and God is the foundation for that objective morality, correct?
yeah.
Okay. And that you hold to certain moral standards because you get them essentially from God, and that you hold those moral standards to be objective.
Yes.
Okay. But if your God were to command you to do something that was different from that, like if your God commanded you to kill somebody and you believed in 100% certainty that it was coming from God, despite the fact that you priorly held the moral consideration that you would never do that. If it came from God, then how would you reconcile that?
Well, I think as humans, we're morally fallible in the sense that when we're going throughout our everyday lives, we don't have access to the appropriate knowledge at all the time, versus like God, who has access to all the facts in the world. So I think that's kind of a relevant factor because, like, for example, if you're trying to find out who's like the burglar of, like, if someone broke into your shop or something, right? And you see a person who's just coming out and he looks very suspicious, and you want to go and interrogate him, but like somehow God reveals to you that you shouldn't do that, and it's probably part of his plan. And somehow he gets find out because the police are waiting outside, and you didn't have to deal with anything because you're inside. Whatever. I think that's kind of a bad example, but what the point I'm just trying to illustrate is that, um, I think if God were to somehow reveal to me directly those types of messages, I should trust him because of the knowledge that he has. Also, due to the fact that I have, that he's omnibenevolent, and an omnibenevolent person couldn't lie.
Okay, but the issue there is that
I was kind of like going somewhere with what I was asking. I'm sure why you keep saying this is evidence of God. Like the reason you brought this up is you said one of the potential arguments for God is the moral argument. And my argument, what I said was that why is this evidence of a God? Because I can grant there's objective morality, but if it's objective, that means it probably has nothing to do with the mind. Like you said, it's the nature of God, which it's fine. Then why do you need the consciousness at all? You can just get rid of the consciousness entirely and say it's a law of physics, nature of nature. Why would this morality, why couldn't it be grounded in nature without any mind of any kind related to it whatsoever?
Well, because of the is ought distinction that I bring up, and I'd have to point out that if it wasn't based in some sort of, you know single deity, then it seems that morality would be clear in a sense.
Jordan, can I get rid of that is ought problem? Because you said something very interesting, which is God has all knowledge. And you seem to imply that the more you know about something, the more we can understand this objective morality. And I guess if knowledge is not going to make us more moral, why does God having all knowledge make him more moral?
Well, I mean, if you have more knowledge about something, you're going to have, a greater access to know how to act on a certain thing. Because if you treat
Agree.
the morality as laws, if you're like a lawyer and you know the legal code, you're obviously going to be able to act upon those laws and deliberate more effectively because of your knowledge. I'm not sure. Could you rephrase your question, because maybe I just missed it?
Well, it just seems TJump and I, I'm somewhere in between, but I'm leaning towards a morality and situations that we can objectively understand ethically, but I think we can take a God out of it. I don't understand. In fact, it seems to lie on this being that is all knowledgeable, and I just don't think we have good evidence for that. Nonetheless, I think we can become more knowledgeable in ethical situations, in morality.
Well, if we were just want to go from that premise, you know, I can see how you might want to do that. You'd have to engage with things like the problem of the criterion, which I think is especially potent in epistemology, and it can apply to morality, is that the problem can be phrased as how do you form a criterion for that? And if you say you put in a criterion, right? Like just say it's utilitarianism, for instance.
Is
Then
God's
you
nature.
then you could just say what's the criterion for that, and so forth. And I think if you don't have some sort of like objective grounding for your criterion, then it seems that people can disagree about what morality is, and if people can disagree, that means there doesn't seem to be a truth of the matter. If this only is the case if morality is grounded in human beings, for instance, then it seems that disagreement would lead to moral arbitrariness.
Well, so you could apply the problem of the criterion also applies to God. So you can say it's grounded in God's nature, and then we can disagree because we're atheists. That doesn't make any sense. And so the problem of the criterion applies to every model, including the God model. The God model doesn't solve the problem. So that wouldn't actually help your position there. But I think Amy brought up a really interesting point. With the is-ought problem, knowledge is all is. So you know all is statements. And if God has omniscience and knows all is statements, it doesn't get you to an ought. So the is-ought problem would mean that his omniscience is kind of irrelevant because it can't get you from any of those ises, and all of his infinite knowledge, they're all is statements, and none of them get you to an ought.
Well, I mean, it just seems like God would have some sort of moral ought, like his. I don't know exactly what part of him would be an ought, but there would be some sort of ought in tribute to God, but I'm currently not really sure in how that would be, like what type of foundation that would take place in.
Yeah,
Regarding
that does make sense to me to say that like ought exists as like a part of God somewhere. Like I don't even know what that means.
It's one of his attributes. We normally say benevolent, omnipotent, or at least in the Western theistic sense. And all the other omnis are attributes of God. I mean, that doesn't seem too out of the ordinary.
Oughtness isn't one of those things typically. Oughtness, I don't think can be it's not like a property. It's not even doesn't even work that way. I don't know what it means for oughtness to be a property.
Would you consider yourself like a moral anti-realist, and you just don't
I'm a
think
moral
there's
realist. I'm very much moral realist.
I see. Then I'm curious how you would think that moral facts would like manifest themselves, or like the laws of physics.
Yeah, so I think instead of God's nature, it's nature's nature, but I don't think it has like a property of oughtness anywhere. I don't think there's like an oughtness particle hiding. Like I don't think it even makes sense. I think oughtness is a category we label things. Once like you can prove that oughtness isn't a part of morality. Like is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? Like try to answer that.
Can you say that again? Should you do it because you ought to do it, or you ought to do it because it is moral?
Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral?
Euthyphro.
Spoilers.
Couldn't either way, like
No, so the first horn is saying if you imagine a box that contains all the things that make something moral, oughtness would be one of the things in that box. So it is something moral because you ought to do it. That means oughtness is one of the entailed properties that make something moral. The second question is, ought you do it because it's moral? That means there's some box and all the set of moral properties are in that box. And once you know that, then you apply this outside property of oughtness that has nothing to do with morality. You're just applying it to the moral things. me, the second one seems to make more sense. You ought to do something because you know it's moral. So once you have a set of moral facts or whatever makes something moral and you know what that is, then you can say you ought to do it. But oughtness is never going to be one of those facts.
Let me try and give my thoughts on what the Euthyphro dilemma would look like. I usually interpret it as saying either gods, like he did in Euthyphro, the Plato did. He formulated it as um, should the gods do something, or is something pious?
Well,
Because
so just to clarify, what I said literally has nothing to do with the Euthyphro dilemma other than the structure of the argument. So my argument is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? So forget the Euthyphro dilemma.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, that's fair. It seems like obvious you ought to do something because it's moral seems to be the correct answer there. So I would say that no, oughtness isn't really property and morality anywhere. It's something we add on later. But I still wanted to go back to
Also, if moral determinations can change, or if God determines what moral considerations are, like what moral valuations are, or what the morality is, if God makes that determination and there is a change in that determination, or if there is a change possible in that determination, or if God can change it, then it's subjective to God. So it's subjective to God or it's subjective to human beings. It's one of the two. Because if it was objective, then God would just be appealing to something outside of it. This would be, God can't violate the objective morality of the universe. So it's subjective either way. It's subjective to us or it's subjective to God. It's one of the two.
Well, why couldn't it be like, how foundationalists have some non-inferential beliefs? It would be like a sort of non-inferential belief with God being the foundation of morality. There would no be further justifier, because that would be the self-justifying belief. I forget what foundationalists use as the term, but it's basically like self-evident beliefs or something like that.
well, it doesn't work because again, it goes back to what I said before. If you want to say that there's some kind of foundation, ultimate foundation that is the ground for morality, you can just say it's nature. You say there is a necessary aspect of nature, a quantum field or something, and it grounds all the laws, and morality is one of those laws. And the God part is completely arbitrary. It's irrelevant. You don't need it.
That's actually, I want to piggyback off of that, because that's where I was kind of going in the very beginning of this, is that if we have the explanatory model of where our morals come from, and we understand that they are essentially they're derived from our empathy, from the empathy that we have for one another, the empathy that we have evolved over time, because we've artificially selected for that, because it's what aided our survival. So even if we weren't consciously aware of it, we realize cooperative action works, selfish action does not work. So we want people in the group that are cooperative. We want to get rid of the people that are selfish. So we ostracize within the group. Their genes don't get passed on. And so empathy becomes a positively selected trait. So we artificially selected for this. We understand this. It has explanatory power. It explains things. So just saying God is it doesn't offer anything. It's not an explanation. It's simply you're making an assertion about something regardless of the evidence at hand. So if we have this explanatory model of where morality comes from, where morals come from, where moral valuations come from, of where empathy comes from, and we understand this, why do we need God to explain it?
Well, then, and I would have to reject one of your premises that the empathy would be a sufficient explanatory model for morality, because it seems like it can't account for cases, or at least in the evolutionary sense, these evolutionary debunking arguments can't take place or account for situations where it seems like it would be fit for survival, but it would be immoral.
No, sure we do. Evolutionary game theory. Cooperative action leads to more positive results in the long term than selfish action. So selfish action leads to positive results in the short term, but negative results in the long term. If everybody acts selfishly, then the society or the civilization will fall apart. If everybody acts cooperatively, then the society will flourish, because we get long-term positive results because of this. We share food, we share shelter, we work together. So we learned this very early on And the thing that facilitates that is our ability to empathize, but that empathy comes from mirror neuron. And mirror neurons are things that exist in many species, not just us. So we understand this, that mirror neurons are integral to developing empathetic relationships with other people. So through this evolution of mirror neurons and our ability to empathize with other people, we understand and we have an explanation as to where all this comes from, as to where our moral considerations, our moral evaluations, why they are subjective, because they're subjective from individual to individual, group to group, nation to nation, all over the planet. It's all subjective. So we understand this. I'm saying in the face of an explanatory model, why do we need to appeal to something that offers no explanation?
Jordan, I can illustrate this to you, what JL is speaking about. Say you are walking down a street and you have a sandwich, and you notice that a homeless person is on the street. And so what you do is that you split the sandwich in half and you hand it to him and walk away. Now, my question to you is, why did you split that sandwich, and was it God?
Well, I think there could be a numerous different reasons why someone would do that.
Okay.
Like hand a sandwich to someone. It could be for selfish reasons. Like he could want people to recognize him for fame, for approval upon his peers. He could do it because he just wants to help out the guy. And like the empathy that GL Warren was talking about.
But he gave him the sandwich because he looked hungry, right?
I mean, in this hypothetical situation, it could be that or many other causes. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, he's looking at him. He looks like he needs a sandwich. He looks hungry. He's not asking for one, but you decide to do it anyway. It doesn't matter why. It's how did you make the determination that this person was in need? Is because you recognize what need looks like in yourself. And so you empathize with the fact that they are needy, that they are in need. You recognize that. You internalize their experience, mirror neurons, and then you react accordingly. So it's either you reject it, which you can find considerations, which makes, you can subjectively say, no, I don't want to. I'm really hungry and I want to eat my sandwich and he should get a job. Or you can say, no, I have this and I don't need this all of this sandwich, so I'm going to split it. I'm going to give it to him. Or it says, oh, you know what? I wasn't really all that hungry anyway. Have the whole sandwich. Or, hey, oh, look, everybody's looking. I ought to do this because it makes me look good. Doesn't matter. You wouldn't have been able to identify with the other person's plight without those mirror neurons.
So to summarize, they're saying morality is subjective. It's not objective. Therefore, you don't need a God to explain objective morality because there isn't one. That's their argument. My argument is even if morality is objective, that doesn't indicate a God because it can be objective without a God.
And I agree with both those assessments.
Well, that's quite interesting. I'm just wondering, how in TJump's view, because he thinks that morality is objective because it's like a fact. At least that's what I think he thinks.
Yes.
How can he account for differing expert intuitions on a certain subject and come to a conclusion regarding that? Because I think that's one of the things that religions often have a better time doing is giving us a more definitive answer in those moral situations. But for example, we'll just take a controversial situation like abortion, right? It's very controversial. There's many arguments on both sides. How would you, in a moral, from a moral naturalist perspective, be able to come to a conclusion based off of radically different expert opinions on the subject?
So it would be like there's a law of physics that is the moral law, and other things contravene on that law. And when the other things are mitigated and are less effective, then the moral law begins to take over. And so as society progresses, if the thing that's preventing us from acknowledging the moral law to its fullest extent is our pragmatic needs, for example, as our pragmatic needs will decrease, then our openness to the moral law will increase and more societies will become more morally inclined. It's easy to explain a differentiation in way any laws in physics work, as one law is predominant in one domain. If the domain changes, then the other's law becomes dominant, which causes a gradient. Why? I don't know why you think that God answers that question better, or why religions answer that question better. Because as far as I know, they don't have a good answer for that question.
Well, oftentimes they can come through the form of divine revelation, or like the Bible or Quran, or other sorts of guides. But what I'm raising here is some sort of like moral skepticism towards that view, because it seems that even if it were to be true, under like an atheistic type of source or anything, related to that domain, that it would be hard, at least almost impossible, to get moral knowledge regarding specific cases. And if it can't do that, then it doesn't seem to be a good model, because, even practically speaking, as you say, we would want to have those sort of conclusions in
Not
mind.
sure what you're arguing there. So, like, I'm saying that our moral intuitions are kind of like our eyes. We see things; they're not always accurate. They are inaccurate many times, but we can still gain knowledge about the world through our eyes. And so, the fact that our moral senses would be exactly the same as any of our other senses would make perfect sense. We can gain knowledge in the same way we do for any other senses, essentially. But I don't like when we're comparing that explanation to um, the Bible and the Quran, and people have a bunch of different religions. It seems like the more plausible explanation of what explains moral disagreement is our moral intuitions are like a sense, like eyes, and they're fallible, and they come up with different conclusions. Seems like a much better explanation than there's a whole bunch of different Bibles.
Well, if it's grounded on intuitions, the whole point of bringing up is that then when we look at human, experiences, people have differing intuitions. So
Yes.
how are we going to decipher about that? Like, with perception, it's a little bit different, because, we're looking out to an objective world that exists beyond our perception. But with like intuitions, like it can get a lot more fuzzy in that realm.
So I'm just saying it's exactly like that. So our intuitions are kind of like our eyes. They're trying to sense the moral law. They're trying to see what morality is, just like our eyes are trying to see what the world is. And you do that in varying degrees. Like you have disabilities, like you're blind. People literally can't see. People who are psychopath have that intuition disabled. They don't have a moral intuition. So I'm saying that in the naturalist view, morality is exactly like all of the other senses, and they come in gradients, and you have different opinions, and you have diseases that affect them, and that makes perfect sense. It's make a lot of sense, a lot more sense than there's an all-powerful being God, but a whole bunch of different Bibles. That seems to make a lot less sense.
In fact, I would say that we have one less presupposition than theists.
All like you have the benefit of parsimony.
I mean, I would, that's a different argument, but yes, I would say all-powerful, all-knowing, all-living being has infinitely many more assumptions, but it's different things.
So, but Jordan, I mean, if you can, I don't know, I kind of want to, because I never got an answer on that. I was like, but in the face of an explanatory model, why would we need to appeal to something that offers no explanation?
Well, I mean, I think that was a little bit of a loaded question, because obviously,
well, I mean, if you have two options, right? Okay, so I've got option A and option B, and option A maybe fulfill some sort of psychological utility with me or whatever, but it doesn't offer a mechanistic explanation for a phenomena. And then I've got option B that offers a mechanistic explanation for a phenomena. So I'm looking for a reason why this phenomena occurs, and I've got two options. One has the mechanistic explanation, one does not. Why would I favor the one that offers no mechanistic explanation? Why would I do that? Exactly.
You wouldn't, and yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. From my perspective, I'm arguing that there are attributes about like objective moral laws that concern God that can explain some things. Like, because I generally take it as a premise that there are moral duties that kind of transcend, the evolutionary makeup of the mind. Because if we were going to consider objective, in my opinion, it shouldn't be dependent upon what anyone else thinks. So,
but in your worldview, it's dependent upon what God thinks.
It's not just what he thinks; it's about the fact of the matter regarding his essence or his property.
But as indicated by the Bible, that can change. When God makes a determination that one group of people should be killed and then other people should not be killed, and the reasons for those are different, then he's justifying murder under certain mitigating circumstances, and then saying murder is not justified under these mitigating circumstances. For example, if you're Jewish, you shouldn't murder your fellow Jews, but if you are someone else, go and murder them. See,
Well,
that makes it subjective. That's a subjective determination. So, like I said, give me a moral law, give me an objective moral law that doesn't require appealing to an agent.
In terms of like, well, I mean, if we're talking about moral acts, you could probably argue that this it depends on how you define agent. It's not that simple. Like if we consider animals as agents, when we were talking about, otherwise we'd just be talking past each other.
Well, if an agent is something that can choose, because if something is objective, it is outside of it. Literally, is something that it is true regardless of what you think, feel, or whatever power you have. Okay,
Like
you appeal to the objective, and if there's no objective to appeal to, then it's subjective determination. So that's what I'm saying. If these are objective, then God is not appealing to them. Then I'm saying that, but we see the evidence of it, that it is subjective to God. God makes these determinations on the fly. Like, for example, at one point, if God exists, if God actually exists, then slavery was moral at one point and had specific rules set down for it. But now, slavery is not moral. So there was a change there.
Well, even if we take in general principles, I don't think that anyone would dispute the fact that even if there's an objective law that it can differ in some cases, but that doesn't mean it's subjective. Like, for example, even if we have like laws that say you shouldn't kill, there's still like reasonable exceptions to the law that it's still objective. That it is United States law, but you're allowed to kill someone if someone's like murdering your family in
That makes it subjective. Unjustified killing is one. There's justified killing, and then there's unjustified killing. And
right.
A justified killing is within the parameters of the law, and unjustified killing is outside of the parameters of the law. They're both the same action, but that makes the determination of these things of when they're legal or when they're illegal or when they're moral or immoral to be subjective.
And can I actually just ask, Jordan, maybe this will cut to the heart of it. Do you think that something is good because God says so, or is something just good and God says so?
Well, that is that is the word I cannot pronounce ever.
Euthyphro.
Euthyphro.
So I just got my retainers in, so it's hard to speak.
Okay, you're good.
Like regardless, I think that's a false dichotomy. I think there's more options that can be presented. So, in that, right, instead of like it being independent of God or just a choice, the usual option is to say that it's grounded in His nature, which is a third option that is valid. But
grounded in its nature.
Yeah, I apologize. I have to go. I have to go take a test. I thank you. So thank you guys for the call. I apologize if I wasn't speaking clearly or my.
No problem. You're good, Jordan.
Thank you for coming up.
Jordan, you did great. We really enjoyed the conversation. You brought up a deep and fascinating topic.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
That was a good conversation. Now, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to join us. Concrete, we see you in queue. Hang on. Aaron? Oh, yes, sir?
I'm just wondering if maybe J.L. Warren, you sound like you're familiar with the Euthyphro dilemma. Would you be willing to talk just briefly about it?
Well, I mean, I know a lot of people in the audience are they're familiar with it. Just saying, all I'd have to say on it is that just saying it's grounded in God's nature doesn't answer the question. That's why it is the Euthyphro dilemma. But ultimately, I think you can derive from it is that morality is either it's arbitrary to either God. If God exists, then morality is arbitrary to it, or if there's no God, it's arbitrary to us. Either way, because if there is an objective standard, then it stands outside of God, and God is merely appealing to that, and then by definition, God is not God. Given the kind of Abrahamic standards of what God is determined to be, so that there's nothing objective outside of it. So I think a lot of people understand that, but I will just throw out there that just saying morality is grounded in God or grounded in God's nature, that just means it's a subjective determination, because God makes the moral determination as to when things should be applied, what things are moral, what things are not moral, and this changes. It moves. It very much seems to adapt to what humans think over time. And that would inherently, that just goes to show that it is inherently subjective. But that's pretty much it. Just throwing out there the objective. I had another theist try to do that, say, "Oh, well, it's grounded in God's nature. That's it," and that's not an answer to it. That doesn't solve the Euthyphro dilemma.
That's a nonsense response that appeals to nothing.
Yeah,
just imagination.
If I could just
not really. So.
Oh no, absolutely.
It's a legitimate response to the way Euthyphro dilemma is phrased and interpreted in one sense. Like the way it's phrased in Socrates' actual work is slightly different than the way we say it, like is something good because God says so, or does God say it because it's good? That phrasing is not perfect phrasing. It's a generalization. And in that generalization, you can apply this, oh, well, maybe it's God's nature garbage. But the point of the dilemma in Socrates' thing, you're right, it doesn't answer that one. It does answer the imprecise phrasing of the way that most atheists say it. So it's usually best to like phrase it slightly differently.
What's the best way to phrase it?
Is something good because of God deems it so, or is it good by something other than God deems it so?
I just want to say, it just seems like they want their cake and to eat it too, because it takes things from subjective and objective morality, because arbitrary, it would be based on a mind. It would be based on this being, and yet it has somehow an objective quality to it that gets away from every other mind that we know of. Oh, welcome, Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron was messaging me. He wanted to talk about theistic God, kind of, it sounded like. Might be somewhat related to Islam.
As opposed to a non-theistic God?
I said deistic.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, deistic. Where's Jack?
Hey,
Aaron, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So first I would say I don't mean to be throwing Jordan under the bus here, but I don't think the moral argument really works here, because mainly because one, it comes with the presupposition of morality is objective without the evidence of morality being objective. That's a first. And second, it doesn't necessarily naturally follow from objective morality to therefore God exists. I don't think it necessarily follows from that. There's more explanation outside of that.
So dare I say you're preaching to the choir?
That's what my argument and Taco's argument were. Those were the two things we both said.
Yeah, I would say I agree with those arguments. But
JL Warren, not Taco. JL Warren. Me and JL Warren.
Yeah. I would so I mean, okay, this is not exactly a conventional way to get this conversation going, but I would I've heard JL Warren talk a lot, and I know that rather than making the whole contingency argument over again, I think we've all heard it over here. So I want JL Warren specifically to explain to me his understanding of the contingency argument, if you don't mind.
Well, could you like give like, is this an argument for God? Could you present it? Instead of asking him to present your argument, you should.
No, I want to basically what the aim of it is just to understand, just to see where we both stand with regards to the argument, just so I can know that, just to see that like if we're on the same page, because other people have made the argument before, we've all heard the argument, but then I just want to see that we're on the same page with regards to the argument, like with what the argument is actually saying, not whether we agree on it.
I don't know about him, but if someone was agnostic to, I mean, this ultimately boils down to a necessary being claim, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And if somebody was, say, agnostic to the necessary being claim, maybe it's a brute fact instead, or something else, right? A simulation.
I don't.
I'd like him to present
Assuming-
his version so we actually know what he's talking about.
So okay,
Could
so
you prove
Aaron,
a necessary?
So Aaron, just to
being?
clarify, you're talking about everything is either necessary or contingent. That things are either necessary or contingent, and because not every being can be contingent, it follows that there must be a necessary being upon which all things are contingent, right?
It's more like it's more like by virtue of the existence of contingent beings, there cannot be only contingent beings. There must also be a necessary existence upon which those contingent existences.
So I hold that the argument for contingency doesn't get you to God because there's no logical contradiction in infinite regress. That you
There's
could
no logical
have an
contradiction
you could
in
have an
infinite
infinite you could have an infinite regress of contingency.
So you're essentially saying that there can be an actualized infinite.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is logically possible.
Yeah, there's no logical contradiction there. So
How is that?
Some type of physical substrate.
I don't see how there can be an actualized infinite.
Because there's no logical because Aaron, there's no logical contradiction there.
No, I would argue there is a logical contradiction in saying that there can be an infinite regress.
What is it?
Okay, let me put it this way. Could I ever get to this point in time if I had to wait an infinite amount of time before getting to this point in time?
Not a logical contradiction.
Has a logical contradiction.
It's not a logical contradiction is P and not P. So in order to say that there's a logical contradiction with a past infinite, you're going to need to show which property in the past infinite is logically contradictory, as in it literally the thing exists and does not exist at the same time.
So no, I'm saying this point in time exists, right?
Yeah,
I'm saying
for example,
it is impossible for it to have been. Go ahead.
Aaron, for example, whole numbers go forever in either direction, right? But but 6 still follows 5, and 4 still precedes 5.
Mm-hmm.
So those are there. Okay,
mm-hmm.
You can still have a number chain and still get to 5, and still get to 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. So there's no logical contradiction for there to be an infinite number chain and us simply be at 5, 6, or 7, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no logical contradiction there.
I'm not saying. Okay, here's what I'm not arguing against that. In abstraction, it is possible for there to be there is an infinite number of potential outcomes. Let's say, or there's a potential infinite, right? Infinity can manifest potentially, but it cannot manifest actually. It cannot be in the physical world.
Yes, it can.
That's the argument I'm making.
The universe could go on eternally, and yet we could still have a finite beginning with the Big Bang.
Wait, so you need to show
that means it's not infinite. If there was a beginning for it,
you need to show the logical contradiction. There is no logical contradiction with a past eternal infinite. Even if, like you say, the present moment exists. If the B theory of time is true, there's a past infinite and the present moment exists. If there's a way to variation method in order to skip different interval times, the present moment can exist and there can still be a past infinite regression. There's no logical contradiction with there being a past infinite regression and the present moment existing. The only way that would be impossible is if you must necessarily go through every single point in time sequentially from the beginning. And even so, there's still going to be a present moment at some point.
And that's why...
Which means it cannot be infinite.
No, it can be infinite.
And so that's why the argument for contingency, that all things are contingent except for this one thing, that doesn't work. You need to be able to... So if all things are contingent, except for one thing, you're just special pleading this one thing out in order to justify the argument. So, because there's no logical contradiction, there's no logical contradiction in an infinite regress, then that's the best explanation we have given the evidence we have at hand.
Well, I want to understand the point that you just made before
special pleading something because you're special pleading something out in order to basically end the chain.
Well, I want to understand something before that. So you're saying that I'm essentially making an exception for the necessary existence, right? In that it is not contingent. Is that the point of the argument you just made, or have I misunderstood?
No, it's because the argument for contingency relies upon special pleading.
How so?
Because you're special pleading God. Everything is contingent except for God.
Yeah, I'm saying that occurs by necessity.
Okay.
Because everything is contingent.
But you're simply defining God as that.
How do you get from a physical
No, I'm
necessity?
concluding.
Okay.
No, I haven't mentioned God at all. I'm just making the case for a necessary.
But that's what the argument goes to. But the whole point is that you cannot eliminate the possibility of an infinite regress because an infinite regress is not logically contradictory.
And I'm making the case that it is logically contradictory.
And you're wrong.
Okay.
You're defending some type of atheist or non-atheist view right now, but I'm more interested in how Aaron would go to God and how he would get from like a physical necessity to some type of God, right? Like Grandmappy poses some type of like physical necessity, right? But like, how do you get from that to God? Because that's a big step.
Yeah, and even if it was a God, even if it was a God, that God could still be contingent on a previous God. And that God could still be contingent upon a previous God.
Then that by definition is not God. Then
you'd have
by definition that is not God because
you just have an infinite regress of God. Which
then
technically, if God is eternal, that's what that is. Because God would have to eternally exist. God would have to eternally exist into the past before God arrived at the moment of creation. So there is no logical contradiction in it from either direction. We're just saying that there's insufficient evidence to warrant belief in a God, and you're special pleading by basically saying God is the stopping point. Everything is contingent except for God.
No, everything is necessarily contingent upon God.
Well, Aaron, can I ask? I have a claim. I believe that God is contingent on humans, and that's where all the evidence lays. How would we know the difference between God being contingent on humans or humans being contingent on God?
I don't understand how God would be. Can you clarify that, please?
Sure. So if we were to eliminate all human minds, Yahweh would no longer exist because he only exists in our minds. And so if you were to eliminate all humans, God would cease to be. He's contingent on us.
Okay, is that in line with the idea that perception is reality?
Perception is reality? I don't know. I don't know why you'd make a one-word definition, like perception equal reality. No, perception is perception, reality is reality.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up. Wait, so you're saying that... Okay, so you're saying assuming that the contingency argument is true and that necessary existence exists and that there is God, right? How do we tell the
difference between both contingencies? You're saying we're contingent on God. I'm saying God is contingent on us. How can we tell who's right?
Okay, let me just clarify this just so I can understand it better. So you're saying that you're putting the contingency relationship aside for further questioning, but you're saying, let's say hypothetically there is God, right?
No, I'm saying I'm not saying hypothetically. I'm saying God doesn't exist. We create him in our mind. And so if humans don't exist, God wouldn't exist. Just like any other fictional character that we create.
Yeah, that presupposes that we do create God in our minds.
It does. How can we tell the difference between you presupposing that God just creates us?
I don't understand.
I mean, I don't know how else to tell you. Like, do you think, how about this? Do you think that Thor and Odin would still exist if humans did not exist?
I'm saying Thor and Odin don't actually exist. I'm making the case that
God
actually exists.
You're starting to understand the atheist position.
And we are saying that God,
I understand what the atheist is.
Add one more God. One more God.
Aaron, we are adding, and in the category of gods that human beings have created, the Abrahamic God is a part of that category. And
I'm making the case
there is no way to determine that is not true.
No, I'm arguing that it isn't, though. I'm arguing that God objectively exists, necessarily exists. That's what I'm trying to argue right now. I'm saying that God objectively and necessarily exists.
Okay,
whereas all the other
in
ones
order
don't.
to do
So-
that,
so
I don't think that.
No, but
that question was
Aaron, in order
Yeah.
to do that, you have to show how the impossibility of that. You have to show how it can't not be not be the
Impossibility of the contrary.
But yeah, so
That's
because
impossible.
the infinite regress is not logically contradictory, it still holds as a valid conclusion.
Well,
Okay,
you could just present a contradictory position, right? So you could be like, Aaron, so that's impossible because the physical necessity exists.
Sorry, could you just reiterate that?
Yeah, I'm saying, how do you get from the physical necessity? I presented a contradiction. The physical necessity exists. You're saying it's God. You're saying the necessary being is God. I'm saying it's some type of physical substrate.
I'm saying, okay, it's impossible for it to be physical.
Well, that's impossible because it is physical.
Impossible for
like
it to
the
not
necessary
be physical.
existence.
Yes, it's impossible for it to not be physical. It must be
What
physical.
you're saying the necessary existence must be physical.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yes.
It is impossible for
I'm
it
saying
to not be
I'm saying
physical.
it's an impossibility because something that is
Well, that's
physical
impossible
is
because it
contingent
has
upon
to
its
be
parts
because
that
it is.
compose it. Now I'm saying a physical something that is physical is contingent upon the upon the parts that it's formed by.
No.
And that contradicts the whole idea of the necessary existence. Necessary existence cannot be contingent.
Quantum fields are not composed by anything.
Well, it would be necessary, not contingent. So there's no contradiction. It just contradicts your view. That's why you aren't understanding it.
It would be necessary. What would be? Could you just like rephrase that?
Yeah, it's the necessary existence, I guess, necessary being, but it's more like a necessary substrate, if you will, whatever the physical substrate is, whether it be quantum fields, energy, whatever that ultimate physical substrate is, where it can no longer be further broken down. That would be the physical substrate. That would be, or quantum fields, whatever it ends up being. That is the physical necessity that exists. And you're saying it's something else. And we're saying that's impossible because that already exists.
No, I'm saying it's impossible for it to be physical. I'm saying it's impossible for the necessary existence.
That's
to be
impossible
physical.
because it's physical. It necessarily
let him
has to be
finish.
physical.
Let him finish.
I don't understand. What do you mean it has to be physical? Why would it have to be physical?
Because physical is all that exists.
That's a presupposition. You don't know that.
Yours is also a presupposition. And you don't know that.
Which part? What do you mean? Which one's a presupposition?
That
What did I say? That's a
physical things
presupposition.
can't be necessary, or physical things need parts that God can be.
No, that's just a fact. If there's an existence that's physical, okay, that physical thing is contingent. Do we agree on that?
Oh, no, that's your presupposition. Nowhere in physics does it say
Why is it
that.
not
Nowhere in
contingent?
science.
It
Because
has
it's
parts upon which it
necessary.
depends.
It can't be contingent if it's necessary. It's the definition of necessary.
I'm saying it's not necessary.
But you're wrong. You're just saying that.
How am I wrong?
There's nothing in any branch of physics or science that necessarily states that anything that is physical must be contingent. In fact, contingent isn't even a property in any science field at all.
I'm not making. That's the thing. I'm not making the case from a naturalist worldview. So here's the problem. Look, here's the problem with viewing things as everything is physical. That is that is not even a scientific view at all. So you're applying the scientific method to absolutely everything that could possibly exist.
I don't think so. The point here is we're mirroring your argument. We're saying that if you want to say that something is necessary, you can say whatever you want is necessary. We can say a physical thing is necessary. You can say a supernatural thing is necessary. We can say a physical thing has no parts. You can say a supernatural thing has no parts. There's no evidence for either of those. They're both equally ad hoc nonsense claims that we're just asserting out of our butts.
And
I'm saying that based on
natural
I'm saying that comes off the back of a whole. So was it?
Well, no, I just want to put as far as natural goes, we have matter and energy. So non-physical things could be maybe our thoughts as electrical currency, but it's still energy in a physical world.
Yeah,
That's not what we mean
that
by
is true.
non-physical.
But I'm saying you don't know that everything that exists is physical.
Yes.
Can we at least agree on that?
Supernatural.
Yeah, well, you could just provide one non-physical thing, and then we can all agree.
No, I don't.
Because
No,
now none of us
I'm not.
agree
I'm
with
not.
you.
No, I'm not in a position where I have to prove that something that is non-physical.
Then we can just say
exists.
no. It's only physical.
I'm saying
there's no non-physical.
No, can you say that? How can you verify that everything that exists must be physical?
Because that's the only thing that exists.
It's the only thing that you know exists, but can you say that it's a fact that everything that exists must be physical?
So the argument is that you are asserting that something is necessary. We can assert that something else, something different is necessary. Just like you can't prove that God is necessary because you're just making it up. We have the same lack of ability to prove things are physically necessary. Just like what you're claiming about ours, we can't prove that there's a necessary physical thing. You can't prove there isn't. You can't prove God is.
But okay, look, that's the whole point of the argument that I'm making here. But then you're just throwing it out here, without regarding the argument that came before.
We're taking the argument and using it for a different conclusion. So we're using exactly your same argument, physicalism. Mm-hmm. Your argument, either it works for both or it works for neither.
When did I argue that?
No, that's my argument. So you are arguing for a necessary being, and we're saying we can also argue for a necessary being. And you have no way to show that one kind is more likely than another kind.
I'm not purely just saying no, there's a necessary being and that's it, full stop. There's a whole argument that comes before that.
Before that? Well, that's the part we're trying to get you to. We're trying to get you to show why is one kind of necessary being more plausible than a different kind of necessary being.
It's what I was putting forth before, the contingency argument.
So the contingency argument just says there's a necessary being. So there's a physical
that's what it concludes, yes.
Yes. So it doesn't tell us which kind of necessary being is the correct kind.
No, it doesn't necessarily say, it doesn't point to a particular necessary being. It just says there is a necessary. Okay, this is the conclusion of the argument. This is as far as the conclusion of the argument goes. It has some implications, but this is as far as the conclusion of the argument goes. It says that by virtue of the existence of
I know the argument. So we
beings,
can say that there is a necessary being, but it's physical. Problem solved. So we grant the argument.
I'm saying okay. If you're trying to make that case by naturally following from the premises of the contingency argument, you can't say that, because
yes, you can. Literally, there's
no, you can't. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because if you take the premises of the contingency argument, okay, you are saying that anything that is contingent is dependent, and everything that is every contingent thing has to depend on the necessary existence, right? And the necessary existence cannot depend on anything else because it's necessary.
And it can be
right.
Physical.
Otherwise, you'd have
and it can be physical quantum field.
No, I'm saying it's not possible for it to be physical.
I know you're saying
because that would make it contingent.
Stop.
That would make it contingent. That contradicts it being necessary.
Stop talking. You said it's impossible to be physical based on the premises of the contingency argument. None of the premises say it can't be physical. It's not in any of the premises. I can grant all of the premises. I can grant the entire contingency argument and say it's a physical quantum field and it's necessary. There's no part of the argument that says it can't be physical. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
No one says that.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
And can I ask, Aaron, what specific God do you think it's contingent on?
Does that really matter here?
I'll be honest with you. I think that's the most important, because I think in my experience, it has been that theists of a specific variety like to defend deism, because once you defend miracle claims, it starts to sound a little silly.
I mean, to be fair, if he could get us to deism, that would be closer than we are now, right?
So it would be. I have big problems with deism. I have big problems with a mind existing outside of a body. We could go that route, but
well, it's not necessarily. I mean, deism.
No, I wouldn't make that.
Deism could be a sufficiently powerful enough agent that kicked the football in the universe and then pissed off with no evidence of its existence, and it doesn't interact with us. So that could very well be deism. But if he's asserting something beyond deism, that's when you're going to get into problems with the logical entailments.
And I'd also say it's why most theists believe that.
It's much harder to defend a specific kind of a God like Islam or Christianity. That's very difficult to do. So
Right.
if you're trying to make him defend that kind of a thing, it's going to be a much more difficult task. So I like to give him the benefit of the doubt, give him the easiest argument he can possibly present, contingency, and see if he can actually make that work. Give him a much smaller burden of proof here than trying to actually pick a specific god.
But Aaron, TJump is correct there. There's no provision that there cannot be a physical thing that is necessary. There's no provision for that. So it could be a physical
Okay.
thing that is necessary, and then all other things that are physical are contingent upon that necessary physical thing.
Okay, can the necessary existence be contingent?
Oh,
No, by
In this
definition, it's
argument, can it be
necessary.
Yes. Okay. So we agree on that, right?
yes, that's one of the
Okay.
premises.
If it is necessary and it cannot be contingent, anything that's physical is contingent.
You're just
No,
defining
that's not a
physical
premise. There's
contingent.
no,
No,
that is not in the argument. I can just add in the premise that say
Okay,
anything
does-
supernatural is contingent, but it's not there. I was just making sure.
Okay, let me justify that claim then. Okay. Do physical things depend on the parts that they are composed of?
No,
How so? What do you mean? No, like
space and time are
they
emergent.
require
They're
those
not-
parts in order to exist,
no,
right?
No. Space and time are emergent. They're not the most basic things. So no, and there are many physical things prior to and outside of space time.
That doesn't contradict what I said, though.
Yes, it does, because you said it's based on temporal, like what's before it. And so if space-time is a specific field and there's a different field that's outside of space-time, there's no before. It's outside of space-time. So if space and time are
I didn't
emergent
make
from
any I didn't make any argument about sequence or time.
you said it's contingent on what's before it. You said
No, I said it's contingent on what it is composed of.
sure. And so there's physical things that are not composed of anything. Quantum fields are not composed. They are not composed of parts.
But they are dependent upon other things, right?
No, they're dependent on nothing. They are the most fundamental necessary thing. They're contingent on nothing.
Okay, can you give me an example then?
Yes, quantum fields. This is the consensus in physics. Quantum fields are the most fundamental thing that ground everything else that exists.
Can you explain that a bit more? Because I'm not exactly familiar with it.
Not sure. Like all of the things like space and time are emergent from other quantum fields. Quantum fields are the things that interact to create literally everything, every field, every particle, every piece of energy. They are the most fundamental thing that creates everything else.
So is that a fact of quantum physics, or is it like
Yes.
what's the history of the development of that? Like that conclusion?
You'd have to Google search emergent space-time and look at the papers. It's really complicated stuff.
Yeah, there's education that goes into that, classes you could take, scholarly articles you can read on that. But
I'll just say you can't have movement, a being, causality without space-time unless you have an expansion.
Oh, physics says no. No, you don't need space-time. Space-time is not the most basic thing in the universe. Even in physics, it's not.
No, I'm not saying I'm saying to have a being, as far as I could tell, or this type of reality.
Yeah, but you said like interactions. You can't have interactions without space.
Oh no, I
When
don't
they
think
say
it's a
necessary
basic
being,
level.
though, it
I
doesn't
mean a being.
necessarily apply to like a god. It could be physical substrate. You could put anything in place. It's just necessary being is just like some type of necessary existence, basically.
Yeah, being in philosophy just means an object that exists.
Okay, can I go back to the infinite regress, the contradiction of the infinite regress here, because I still can't I can't see how it's.
well, there
Well,
isn't a
I think we still
contradiction.
need to
There
talk
isn't
about-
a logical contradiction in the infinite regress. So
Okay, do we know of any physical example of an infinite regress that we know
Wait.
that to demonstrate its possibility?
Whether or not we know it doesn't make it a logical contradiction. So we don't need to know of one that exists for it to not be a logical contradiction. So what you would need to show is where is the logical contradiction?
I mean, I explained how there would be a logical contradiction,
Where is how?
but I was just told no. Like I don't.
Well, what you said was
Well, no, explain it again. Explain it again. Where do you think? Because Aristotle, who came up with this idea of the potential and actual infinites, he admitted there's no logical contradiction in his works. William Lane Craig, who gives this argument all the time, has admitted there is no logical contradiction in infinite regress. All of the the academics who talk about this admit there is no logical contradiction in infinite regress. So I would like you to explain to me, what is the logical contradiction? So the arguments they use that how would we get to the present isn't a logical contradiction.
How is that a logical contradiction if we cannot possibly get to the present? If what was required to get to the present is an infinite amount of
I
time
explained
to
that
pass
before.
that.
So the only way it would not work is if you assume the A theory of time, where you have to go from one sequential moment to the next sequential moment to the next sequential moment. Now, if you're doing that, then you wouldn't be able to skip ahead to like the 50-second sequential moment or whatever. If the B theory of time is true, that means all of the times exist at all points of time, essentially. They always exist. And you're not going from one sequential moment to the next sequential moment. And so if they all exist, then there's no contradiction with every moment being a present moment. And
Okay,
it's one
can I give
example.
another example then?
Sure, go for it.
All right. If let's say I usually play volleyball. So let's say I'm about to take a serve, right?
Yeah.
If I had to get permission from an infinite number of people before I can take that serve, will I take that serve?
Time. That's the A theory of time. That's the same thing I just said. So if you don't assume the A theory of time,
Aaron,
this different example is more for me to understand.
Can you knock down B theory?
Sorry?
Can you knock down B theory?
Can you explain B theory?
The B theory of time.
It's that every moment in time exists at the present moment. So like there's infinitely many present moments. They all exist. All time points exist at all times. They're always there. Like a movie. They're like the slides in a movie.
I don't see how I would have to refute that if we don't have any evidence that it's a fact.
Because you have to show that B theory of
No. You said it's logically
I don't see how it's a fact.
Wait. You said it's logically impossible.
Yes.
There's a logical contradiction. It means we don't need any evidence that it's true. All we have to show is it's possible. Because if it's possible, that means by definition it is not a logical contradiction. If B theory of time is possible, that means that no, there is not a logical contradiction with a past infinite regress existing. Doesn't matter if we have evidence for it. It doesn't matter. All we need to do is show there's no logical contradiction. That's it.
There you go.
Still want to see any evidence that there can be a consciousness on the quantum level or supernatural level or
even
beyond that.
Or even a demonstration of how a thing can exist outside of space-time when that is not a thing that can exist.
I don't think we've gotten there yet, to be honest. But
B theory of time is possible, which means the infinite regress is not logically contradictory.
What do you mean possible? As in abstraction, it's just possible? Because we don't know that it's impossible?
Logical contradiction means that it's P and not P is somewhere in the argument.
Yes.
B theory of time doesn't have one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it's possible. Because possible just means no logical contradiction. And so if you're saying that an infinite regress entails a logical contradiction, I can give you an example of an infinite regress that is possible. That means by definition, doesn't entail a logical contradiction. So you would need to show where the logical contradiction in B theory of time is.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You need to knock down B theory of time in order to show that your position is the only one that's available.
What about the A theory of time? What would I have to do about that?
Nothing, because it's irrelevant. The point is, I need one example. I just need one example of a past infinite with no logical contradiction. That's all I need. A theory of time isn't supported by evidence anyway. So A theory of time is not the consensus in physics.
Mm-hmm.
There's equal
the consensus.
No, they're both not the consensus. So neither one of those is the consensus. But the point here is that
they're both
you're
the strongest theories. Then
no, neither of them are the strongest theories. There's not a consensus on the topic. So no.
Okay.
But the point here is that if you're saying an infinite regress is logically impossible, all I need to do is give one example of an infinite regress. Then if there's no contradiction in it, that proves your claim wrong, proves your entire argument false, that an infinite regress is logically contradictory. All I need is one example. Saying that there's even if A theory of time had a logical contradiction, which it doesn't, but it's harder to explain why. All I need is one. I just need one example. And B theory of time is my example because it's easier to explain.
Okay, let me see if I've understood the B theory of time to begin with first. So the B theory of time is essentially saying that every point in time ever is
Exists. It exists right
simultaneously
now.
happening.
Well, it exists. They all exist. So it's kind of like
Think of it like a movie reel, and all of the frames of the movie reel, they all exist. And
Yeah.
you're looking at one right now, which we call the present.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the frames still exist. Just because the movie has played doesn't mean that those previous frames do not exist. It doesn't mean that the frames that have yet to play do not exist.
Also,
you
that'd
can
be
start a movie. You can start a movie right in the middle, right? You can skip to scene 37, right? So it doesn't matter if there's infinitely many scenes. I can skip to whatever scene I want and just say, we're going to play from this point, whatever. So even if I'm playing from the middle of Kung Fu Panda or whatever, even if there's infinitely many movie before this, it doesn't make a difference. It still exists there because I didn't have to go from the very, very beginning to here. I didn't have to go in sequential order because in B theory, they're all there and I can just pick a slide. I can just pick scene number 8,037,000,037. Therefore, it's no logical contradiction.
All right, assuming I grant that, right? I still don't see how that negates the contingency argument here. Because the contingency argument is making the argument
Second
from
premise would be false.
dependence.
So all contingent things must have a necessary cause. It would be false because there'd be no necessary thing here. There'd just be infinite
regression
things.
of contingency.
Yeah, well, they all depend upon something. They all must depend, right?
Yes, they're all
infinite regression.
Yes, so they depend on a previous contingent thing, which depends on a previous contingent thing, which depends on a previous contingent thing forever, and that never stops. Never ever stops.
So that's just an infinite number of contingency and no explanation then.
Correct, which is possible.
Each one explains the one after, or I would say each one explains the one after it, and then
so there's no ultimate explanation for it. It just keeps going back, just continuing.
Infinite regress. Yes.
I would say a finite, by definition, never gets there, or an infinite never gets there because, by definition, it's an infinite.
It is conceivable.
It is. It's literally +1 or -1, depending upon what direction you're going.
Okay, then that's not an actualized infinite.
Yes, it is. We're not talking about numbers. There literally is a thing that actually exists.
I was using it as an analogy. It's just like, what's the explanation for this? This. What's the explanation for that? This. And then so on and so on and so on ad infinitum.
But it can't be actualized because you're having you're just adding 1, 1, 1, 1. So even in mathematics,
he used a bad example.
It's not simply like a concept. Yeah. It's not
like numbers. We're not talking about numbers. It's a bad example.
That was a bad example.
Literally existing things that already exist. Okay. They're not adding anything. They're already there.
No, I'm not saying adding existences. I'm saying explanations.
What?
Not necessarily adding an existence. I'm saying let's say they already exist, but you're viewing explanation you're explaining one in sequence, one at a time. You explain one after the other. So that would go ad infinitum.
Yes.
I don't see how that's logically conceivable.
What do you mean? How it is logically conceivable? Because you just keep explaining the prior one. You just keep going back. There's nothing logically contradictory about that.
In fact, you're explaining incrementing in programming.
Explaining what? Sorry?
It's the fact that it goes on forever and incrementing. Just add 1. You add 1 forever. I would also just like to put that, once again, it could be that there was a finite past and an infinite future, as in the Big Bang is the farthest back that we can currently go, and it could be that we just go on for expanding.
Yeah, it's like the Big Bang is the initial point of observability for our universe, but it makes no statement about what exists, the state of the universe before the Big Bang. So the Big Bang is the initial point of observation.
The present moment isn't contingent on anything. It's just random, essentially. So it's not like to get to the present moment, you must have gone through all of these infinite steps to get here.
That's the B theory of time, right?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. Would you still make the case for the idea that everything that exists, i.e., the universe, is physical and there's nothing outside of that that's not physical?
Yes. Well, that's
okay. Is everything that's physical quantifiable?
No, not necessarily.
Can you
mean,
give me an
like,
example of something that's
what you mean, like,
physical and not
you can
quantifiable?
quantify anything. I can say God is one. God has been quantified. So I don't know what you mean.
Like, as in, like, you can understand it through numbers.
Yes,
You can count it.
God is one. I
No,
just
I'm
counted
not
God.
talking about God. Yeah, I'm not talking about God.
You can understand literally anything through numbers unless it's a logical contradiction. So God, the supernatural, angels, spirits, demons, they can all be quantified. Quantified just means you put a number behind something. It's a label.
Okay, can you count things in the universe? Can everything physical be counted, essentially?
No, you can't like count parts of a quantum field because it doesn't have any parts.
Okay, I'm saying, okay, I'm not. Okay, I need
Well, Aaron, the whole point is that you came up on the stage, you brought up the argument from contingency, and then we've explained ad nauseum that there is no logical contradiction in an infinite regress of contingency, and we've explained how it is possible. So unless you can knock down B theory, which you can't, then our position holds, and there's no defeater there. So if it's something that you need to go and do some more research on, or you need to look into further, then you're more than welcome to do that, and you can come back and we can address this again. But as far as the argument from contingency, it doesn't hold.
I mean, I don't see how the infinite regress fallacy is not.
It's not a fallacy. That's the point. It's not a fallacy. We've already explained. We've explained multiple times how it is not.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, so it should be
So
good.
I simply disagree.
No. This guy literally thinks that infinite regress is a fallacy. It's a theistic thing that's been going around for some reason on Discord, I guess. I've been encountered it a few times, but he legitimately. So, infinite regress is not a fallacy. Infinite regress is a thing that you could demonstrate is like viciously circular or something like that. You could say their explanation is fallacious somehow, right?
I'd call it a conceptual. I'd call it a conceptual phenomenon. Yeah.
But so you just do some research on physicists. Like I think Skydive Phil does a great video addressing William Lane Craig's arguments about contingency and in its relation to the Kalam, where they literally go through this and just explain, there's no logical contradiction. Just Google Skydive Phil part 1 and 2 on the Kalam, and there it's explained by physicists, by actual professional physicists.
Cool.
And I would just want to know how we would get to your God being the contingent thing, because it's one thing to say that we need something at the beginning, which I think we should only believe when we have evidence. And so I just want to know what that good evidence is for that contingent thing.
Necessary.
From their worldview, it's because it's defined as such.
Well, it would be a necessary thing, but point holds.
Yeah, Amy said that God was contingent, and that was funny.
Good to go, Aaron?
Thanks for coming up, bud. Good having you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're still here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, bud. Take care.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Take it, man. We've got Concrete, who's been waiting very patiently. Cloudy Coyote, I'm familiar with. I recognize that name. He was a good conversation last time for sure. We've also got Fithis in queue, so we've got a few people that'll be fun in line. Concrete, come on up.
Oh, too slow. Next.
Let's go on to Cloudy Coyote then.
All right, Cloudy Coyote, come on up.
Hey, Cloudy.
How's it going, man?
No, it's valid. It's definitely valid. Conclusion follows from the premises. I have no idea what you're asking.
Are you asking if we hold that everything can be explained, or there is an explanation for everything?
I
would
like the
posit that-
idea of a necessary quantum field. So I think I like the necessary thing hypothesis.
I would posit that there is an explanation for everything, even though we don't have that explanation yet. But I would posit that for every phenomena, there is an explanation. Yes. It's possible that there's a necessary existence. I am inclined to go with the quantum field route.
Go ask the physicist. It's too complicated, but it's more plausible than a god. It's infinitely better explained than a god.
And it provides mechanistic explanation and predictive power.
So property of reality, like not the universe. No, they literally are actual things that exist.
It comes down to it, Cloudy. If I have two options and one provides a mechanistic explanation and the other one does not, why would I choose the one that does not? No. It's no. I asked you a question. It's like, why would I choose the thing that offers no mechanistic explanation? If I have one thing, the quantum field, and it provides mechanistic explanation for what we see, I can make predictions using it, so on and so forth. And then I've got God did it, which provides
provide a mechanistic explanation. And in terms of quantum field theory, I mean, I would have to ask for at least a simple explanation for what it is. I don't think
you just made a statement that God does provide a mechanistic explanation for things. So please, the mechanistic explanation for how God did it.
No problem. Yeah. So look, you would agree that contingent things require a reason for their existence, right? Correct?
No. And granted, for the sake of the
a
argument,
contingent thing by definition is something that could be another way, correct?
Yes.
Something that could fail to exist.
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, do you not hold to the principle of sufficient reasoning?
No, but that's a different question altogether. So I could say that a brute fact is possible.
No, it is. And are you appealing to reason as like a purpose or reason as in like a cause?
Reason as in like explanation for why it exists.
Okay, that's just cause.
I mean, not necessarily. Sure. I mean, not necessarily.
Yeah, but it sounded to me like you were saying reason is in like purpose.
No,
like an agential purpose for something to like I need this to happen because of for this particular reason.
Not necessarily. No, that's not.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not abusing the language here. That's all.
Okay, sure, no problem. So look, do you believe that a contingent thing, which it could be another way or could fail to exist, that doesn't require an explanation for why?
Yeah, it's called a brute fact. Brute facts. Yes, brute facts are possible.
Wouldn't a brute fact be necessary because it could not be another way?
No, brute facts are a contingent fact that happens to be the case. Literally, a brute fact is like not that. You can have a brute necessity. A brute necessity would be necessary.
Okay, so give an example of a brute fact.
Anything could be a brute fact. A potato exists in the universe could be a brute fact. Like a brute fact is just the way things happen to be.
Okay, but then you're denying the principle of sufficient reasoning. It has nothing to do.
Yes, the vast majority of philosophers deny the principle of reason. It's like principle of sufficient reason.
I don't hold the PSR.
You don't hold the PSR?
Garbage. It's garbage. Most philosophers reject it.
I've never heard that most philosophers reject it, but I don't
know.
Yeah,
it's what's Phil Survey's paper 2020 results. There's a question specifically about the PSR.
Okay, can you give an explanation for why you reject the PSR?
Brute facts are possible. Brute fact is a contingent thing that exists without any explanation. Therefore, the PSR.
But you're
is wrong.
presupposing that it doesn't have an explanation. Can you prove that it doesn't need an explanation?
It's logically possible. So it's logically possible to have a brute fact existing. There's no logical.
I'm saying it's logically impossible. So prove that it's logically possible.
Well, if you have the burden of proof to claim it's a logical contradiction, like where's the logical contradiction with a thing existing with no explanation?
I'll tell you why it's a logical impossible. It's an impossibility for something. Be contingent by definition, and then also be not have an explanation for why it exists. Because if something could be another way, right? Like if an existence could be different, right? For example, like you give the example of a potato, right? If I had a potato on my table and it could be an apple, for example, right? then it needs an explanation for why that specific potato is on the table rather than an
What does that
apple.
even mean?
No, it doesn't.
It could be an
Not
apple.
if it's brewed.
So can you
Not if-
prove?
yeah.
Okay, so that and why? Because if it could be another way, it requires an explanation for why
It
it is
doesn't.
that specific way. And
But if
No,
it
it
has
doesn't.
no
it's
explanation, it
not,
wouldn't
can you
need
please
that.
explain
It doesn't need it. It wouldn't need it.
Can you please explain
I
why?
can explain it. I can explain it.
It has no
I'm
explanation.
Dutch. A potato in Dutch is an earth apple. So the potato is actually an apple. There, we're done.
Wait, so can you actually wait? So in all seriousness, that's a funny joke. I'll give you that. But in all seriousness, TJump and JL, you keep saying that, keep saying no. But can you? Why is that the case that it's logically possible? I just keep hearing this. I gave you a reasoning. Can you refute that reasoning?
Yeah, so an object can exist, which could have been a different object, but has no explanation why.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Any brute fact, a potato exists. And you say a universe, a possible world where there's just a potato.
I'd also like to know why a
But,
potato
I mean,
has the
I
potential to be something else, but God has to be stuck as God.
So there's a possible world with just a potato, and there's a possible world with just an apple, and a possible world with just a tomato.
Yeah, sure, those are all possible worlds. Yes, I'm not
Yes.
doubting that. And therefore,
I was trying to Amy with that one.
Well, I don't understand why God gets this special reasoning. Once again, it's this agent outside of time and space that everything is contingent on. I'm going to say what I said before. We would need evidence for that because you are adding a presupposition that we don't have.
Right. You're right, Amy. We could say that God is also, there's different ways God could be, and him just arguing that God must have one necessary way is arbitrary, but that's a different argument.
okay, so you're saying
I'm
that.
still
So,
waiting. I'm still waiting.
Okay.
JL asked you a question
What
how
was the
God did it, and he said, "Can you explain that?" You said yes, and then started
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah, I know. I
everything
can't. I need to
but
go
that.
forward. To my
No,
argument,
you don't.
right?
No, you don't. You just need to give me the
I don't need to
mechanistic
go
explanation.
forward
No,
with
no,
my
Cloudy. You just need to give me the mechanistic explanation of how God did it.
Yeah, I know. My mechanistic explanation, right, requires you to at least to say that a contingent thing requires an explanation for its existence.
But
Doesn't.
we know
The
that
consensus in philosophy is that that is not the case. That is
But
dumb.
we-
It's very
I
easy to
would
understand.
disagree with that. A contingent thing does not need an
The
explanation.
the explanation for its existence in this case would be you explaining how God
No,
made it.
That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant to what he's asking. So you're asking him to change the topic. Brute facts are a very well attested thing in philosophy. If you want to doubt
Okay,
brute
prove
facts,
that a
that's
brute
fine.
fact does not have an explanation. You're presupposing and you're arguing.
No. It's logically possible for a thing to exist with no explanation, which we would then call a brute fact.
And
No,
I'm
it's
fine
not.
with
It's
brute
not
facts.
logically possible.
I don't want to change the topic. I want him to explain why we should add a God as a brute fact.
I'm not there. Why we should add a god as a brute fact? You mean as a necessary existence?
That'd be
Why he would
brute
be
necessity.
why we would be contingent on
Brute
him.
necessity.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I will go there, and I want to go there, but first I have to get past this step, and then I'll progress my argument.
Okay, Cloudy, is there a logical contradiction in brute facts?
No, there's not a logical contradiction in brute fact. There's a logical contradiction in saying that brute facts don't need an explanation. If you're saying a brute fact is contingent, then it needs an explanation.
What is the definition of a brute fact to you?
Something that could not be any other way.
No, that's a necessary fact. So a brute fact in contemporary philosophy, a brute fact is a fact that cannot be explained in terms of a deeper or more fundamental fact.
Okay,
I got a
so are you
question.
using the argument from ignorance? So then just because
Can God be in another way?
So it's not an argument from ignorance. It's not saying this is it cannot be explained in terms of a deeper form, more not just we just don't know it. It is not
cannot?
explained.
Okay,
By
so you're making that claim. Okay, so then prove that. I'm asking you to prove it, and you've not. You just said
there's no
example,
proof. There's no
potato
proof.
exists.
Is
There's
it
no proof.
logically possible for such a thing to exist? Yes, that's the proof.
That's the proof. Okay,
We
how
don't
is
need
that
to actually
logically
show
possible?
this object is a brute fact. We just need to show is it logically possible? Because if it's logically possible, the PSR is proven false.
If it's logically possible, the PSR is proven false. Okay, can you give me an example of a brute fact? Right.
Yes, a universe with only a potato, and I've given you this 4 times. That would be
Okay, a
brute
universe
fact.
with only a potato. You gave that example, right? Okay.
Yes.
Can you prove that there's no explanation for why the universe is a
It's
potato.
literally
and
my
not an
example.
apple.
I'm literally telling you this is my
I know.
possible
You
world.
can say your example, right? But can you? That's not your argument. Your argument is that it is logically possible for for a universe, right, with just a potato that doesn't need an explanation. So it's contingent, meaning it could be a potato or could be an apple.
Right.
Yes, no problem. So you're saying that there's no explanation for why it's a potato. There's no explanation. Okay.
Right.
So okay, can you prove that?
Yes.
Okay,
It's a
how?
brute fact. There's a possible world.
Bro,
with
you
a
keep,
potato.
this is your
There's a
argument in a
stop,
circle.
stop, stop,
Cloudy,
listen to the words, listen to the words.
It's the
So-
possibility that it can exist. That's the point.
Okay.
Because it can exist, because there's no logical contradiction there. Because it can exist, the PSR is proven is what TJump said.
Okay, let me just let me give
I
you
feel
an
like we're
example,
going round and round here, and we keep it's literally you keep going back to the exact same thing TJump has said over and over and over again.
Okay, fine. Let me give you an example. Maybe it'll help, right? So if and I think maybe you've heard this example, right? Okay. So if I'm walking around, okay, and I see a big orb, right, okay, on the ground, yeah, and somebody tells me that there's no explanation for its existence. It just exists. The orb just exists. It's just there. Would you agree with that? There's nothing
No.
logically contradictory about it?
Well, there's nothing logically contradictory about it, but inductively, it's a bad explanation because inductively, the things we all interact with have an explanation.
Okay. So inductively everything has an explanation, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if inductively everything has an explanation, how are you positing that a brute fact doesn't need an explanation?
Because it's not logically entailed. The fact that inductively something like if all swans are white, and you say, oh, therefore it's logically impossible for them to be black, and be like, no, I can imagine a swan being black very easily, and that proves you wrong. It's not logically impossible for there to be a non-white swan. So if you keep saying that, oh, well, inductively things have a cause, therefore everything necessarily must have a cause, it's impossible for anything to not have a cause. All I need to do is just imagine a thing that doesn't have a cause, and I've debunked you. I've proven that it's not the case, that it is logically impossible for things to exist without a cause.
Okay, fine. But I'm still waiting for you to actually debunk the principle of sufficient reasoning.
It is possible for there to be a potato, which is a brute fact.
Okay,
Debunked.
can you prove that?
Just did. I'm imagining it. So if I'm imagining it, that means it's not logically
But
contradictory.
you can imagine a potato in the universe. There's no problem with that. Now, can you imagine that the potato
I'm
just
imagining a
there's no
possible
explanation
world.
for its existence?
Imagining for a possible world with no explanation, with the potato with no explanation. So imagine a possible world, potato, no explanation.
You can imagine the words no explanation, but the fact that a potato exists and nothing else exists and there's no explanation, but it could be an apple. If it's okay, let me repeat this, right? If it's a potato in the universe only, and it could be an apple, then by definition, it requires an
No, there's
explanation
no
for
definition
why it's a
there. There's
potato
no
and not an
definition
apple.
there. No, there is no definition there that must requires an explanation.
Okay,
It does not
so
exist
you said that.
anywhere.
Okay, fine. TJump, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so you said the universe is a potato, right? Let's say hypothetically.
Potato.
I'm not saying that you're saying the universe is a potato, but let's give it a hypothetical example that have the universe as a potato, right?
Sure.
Why is it not an apple?
Doesn't have an explanation. Brute
So
fact, literally not a
explain
thing.
it.
No,
but
there
why
doesn't
is it not
have
an
an
apple?
explanation. It
Do you
doesn't
not
have an
know?
explanation. I've already answered this. It doesn't have an explanation.
Could it be an
know.
apple?
Yes, it could be an apple. There's a possible world where there's an apple, and there's a possible world with a potato. It is not the
Okay.
possible world with the potato with the apple.
Okay, then perfect. So either that it's necessary that the potato exists only,
No,
or
I've already debunked this. So again, you're just
not
demonstrating your
debunked this,
ignorance
you're
of brute
arguing a
facts.
circle.
I literally did debunk this. You're just demonstrating your ignorance of brute facts. Google brute facts. You don't understand how brute facts work in philosophy. This is a
a
well-developed
brute
concept.
fact is contingent.
Yes, it is contingent and has no explanation.
That literally contradicts the definition of contingency.
Oh my
because-
God, you're so dumb. Like, this is a well-developed concept in philosophy. You saying it's a contradiction when literally every philosopher in the world says you're a dumbass is your problem.
Okay, then
Google
okay,
brute
please-
facts.
Okay, let's not call
Google the
people names,
definition.
but Coyote, come on.
Okay, wait, look. The fact is, right? Okay, can you give me a philosopher, right, that says that if something
Coyote, maybe I can help. Do you think a God exists?
yes.
Okay. Is he outside of space and time?
Yes. He was sans creation, he was timeless, yes.
Why is he not a potato?
Because potatoes are contingent things.
Technically, nothing could be outside of space and time, so that doesn't even make any sense. But That
I mean, yes, it is. Time is a measurement of change, and it's just sans
Prove
creation.
that
There
he
was a
can.
static.
Can you prove?
There's a static state
Can
of
you
affairs.
prove that? Can you prove that he's not a potato?
Can you prove it again? This is
Cloudy.
the same.
Cloudy. Is God a mind?
Yes, God is a mind.
This is your line of questioning.
Peter, hang on a sec, Peter.
Cloudy,
Cloudy,
this-
if God is a
no,
mind,
no,
does God have,
wait.
If God is a mind, does
your
God have
line of
thoughts?
questioning.
No, Cloudy. If God is a mind, does God have thoughts?
Yes, but they don't progress in time. In the sense, sans creation, they didn't progress in time. No.
Then that
That's
is
what you're trying to get
then that is like literally if God does not have sequential thoughts, then God is not a mind. A mind
God
is
has
defined by
sequential thoughts, but it's a static state of affairs. It's not
no, because
progressing
if it's sequential, it adheres to time because there's one thought before the
No,
next
it's not.
thought.
Time is
Yes,
a
it
measurement
That
of
is
change.
temporal.
Okay, let me explain.
That is
to you.
temporal. That is the
Let me explain to
definition
you
of
your
temporal.
misconception. Can I explain to
No,
you
it is
what-
not. That is the definition of temporal.
Yeah,
If I have a thought and then I have another thought, then one thought came before one thought came after.
Yeah,
and if
I
I
agree.
thought about
I
creation
agree.
before I created, and this is a sequence of events.
I agree. No, I have no problem with that.
So God is still so God would still be in space time.
It's not sequential in that sense. That's what. Can I explain to you how God's thoughts are sequential? So look, sans creation, right? There was a static state of affairs, right? Okay, meaning that there's no time to adhere to, right? So there's no time is a measurement of change. So there's no change in his thought, and there's no
Yes,
like
there
it's
is.
not one and it's not one after the other. It's
Yes,
not an
there is.
infinite
There was
regression
the
of-
there was the moment
Oh my
he
God.
thought of creation,
Can you
and
let
the
me
moment.
finish my explanation?
No,
man?
Cloudy, you just
It's
know,
like that.
Cloudy. There's the moment he thought about creation and the moment it created. The moment it thought about creation and the moment it created are two separate
It was
moments.
spontaneous until bro. This is like again. Look, I'm not finished with my explanation, and yet you're already assuming my argument.
No, I'm asserting you don't understand physics. You do not understand what space-time is. You do not
I don't-
understand that a mind that is not subjective to a sequence of thoughts is not a mind. That is something. Minds are not quiescent.
Okay, look, a mind, right? It's a static state of affairs. It's a static.
No,
thought
it's not.
frame.
Minds are not static. That is not a
No,
mind.
Look, I'm not even done finishing. Okay, let me explain, and then after that, you can go on your whole rant. Is that okay?
No. Explain to me how a mind is static. How a mind is quiescent.
Sans creation. Sure.
No.
Okay.
I'm asking you to define a mind. Tell me how a mind is static, and how it is still a mind.
How a mind is static. I'm saying
A
that all the
mind,
thoughts,
a mind
the thoughts
by
are not
definition.
they're static in the sense that it's not progress. His thoughts are not progressing in time, meaning he doesn't have one thought and then think something else after. Right? His thoughts are all necessary, right? Okay.
That
Meaning
makes
it
no
does not-
sense, Cloudy.
How does that not make
He
sense?
can't have a thought. He can't have a thought if he has no time.
Okay, prove that. I literally said 1 billion times that a thought, in the sense that how we have thoughts, is we have thoughts sequentially.
Well,
so we might
see,
think something now.
the
and
problem
not think
is
of it
the
before.
problem is
Listen, you're not.
the
Okay,
problem is, and this is what JL is trying to explain to you. The word mind has a specific definition. If you
Sure.
say that God is a mind, then that mind has a specific definition.
Yes, there are entailments
has-
to that.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
it
I
has
wouldn't define the mind how
sequential
you're defining
thoughts. If it doesn't have sequential thoughts, it's not a mind as
It
we
has thoughts that
define a
aren't
mind.
sequential sans creation.
It can't
Yes.
do that. That is not a mind, Cloudy.
What? Then I reject your definition of a mind. My
Oh,
definition.
then you just
it's
okay.
like
Then you
saying-
just reject reality and replace it with your own.
No, I'm not.
Can you
What?
define a
like
mind for us? Does
The prosecution rests.
Gladly do that.
It's like saying I have a car, but it doesn't have wheels.
do you think
That
a
means
mind?
it's not a car.
Do you think a mind can exist independently of a physical substrate?
Do I think a mind can exist in how you're defining a mind, as in it needs to have sequential thoughts? Then I would say no. But sans creation, that's not what God was.
Cloudy, can I ask then, are these thoughts, are you saying they're all happening at once? He's hearing all thoughts of the universe or that are his own at once?
Hearing all his thoughts of the universe at
In,
once.
in no time.
Because
In
we
no time.
hear like a thought. We go like, I am hungry. I will open fridge. I will get cookies. Like it happens one at a time. What
yeah,
it
sure.
sounds like you're saying is he's having all thoughts at all time.
That's just Amy, that's just silly. You don't put cookies in the fridge.
That's true. I don't put carbohydrates.
God is
sake.
all knowing, so he knows all true propositions, right? By my definition. Yeah.
So if this God has thoughts, how is it having thoughts? Because the only thoughts that we know of require a brain, well, a consciousness, which requires a brain, which requires the body, which requires all these processes on Earth, which requires space-time to exist, right? And you're saying that this mind exists separately prior to everything,
and that it doesn't function in the way, and that it doesn't. No, we can even grant that this mind exists without a body and with no physical substrate, and it exists like outside of space time, and that time does not apply to it. That temporality does not exist to this thing. But that's the problem: is that then it is by definition not a mind.
No,
okay.
You're simply reject your definition.
You're simply calling, but
that's non-existent. You just describe something that doesn't exist. That's
exactly.
Non-existent.
Exactly. And just because Cloudy, just because you want to call it a mind doesn't make it a mind.
Okay, fine. If that's your definition of a mind, that's not. But let me tell
that's not my definition of a mind, Cloudy. That is the definition of a mind.
Bro, no, it's not. I'll tell you why. Sans creation, right? God did not have thoughts sequentially in the sense that he did not think something and then 2 minutes later he thought something else, right? God's thoughts are all necessary, right? Meaning that they all exist at once in a static state of affairs sans creation, right? So in the sense that, look, and how we perceive minds, right, as humans, sure, yes, we think sequentially, but I'm not applying that standard to God, so there's no contradiction.
Is God eternal?
What do you mean by eternal?
Does God existed eternally?
The thing about the tricky thing about using the word eternal is that it usually comports with time, right? So as God existed.
Okay, then is God existed infinitely?
Infinitely, I mean, see, it's
has
hard
God,
to use
has God ever not existed?
Has God ever not existed? No, God has always existed.
Okay, so God has always existed, which means that there was a point in time when there was no creation.
Oh, you're using time again. See,
no,
I knew.
Cloudy, stop. That means that there was a point in God's existence in which creation did not exist, and a point in God's existence when creation did exist. This is a temporal state.
Again, this is
because if God existed infinitely, never not existing, okay, then all the time then all the period of God's existence in which there was no creation is a state before creation existed. There was before creation and there is after creation, which means that's temporal. Which means God had the thought of creation after God had no thought of creation.
Okay, number one is you're wrong on so many fronts. Okay, and let me address this, right? Okay, no, let me address it, right?
I think the point you just made, Cloudy, is that creation has always existed.
No, it's
you don't
not.
realize it yet. Yes.
If creation has not always existed, there was a point that creation did not exist. That means God existed.
But you're using point and you're using all these, bro. You're using vocabulary that only comports with time.
Cloudy.
That's why you're being deceptive.
If you just said creation did not always exist, that means that there was a point where creation did not exist. There was pre-creation and there was post-creation. Okay, for there to be a pre-creation, a moment of creation, and post-creation, these are temporal. Which means
I agree with that.
Which means the thoughts that precede these things, given your definition of God, are also temporal. Which would comport with it being a mind.
Okay, can I?
But that means that mind exists in space-time.
Okay, can I tell you why that's false? Let me explain, at least. That'd be nice.
You can try.
So,
you won't succeed, but you can try.
Thank you. Okay, I don't appreciate the condescending tone, but at least let me address the argument, right? So if you have, right, the universe being instantiated, right, like from pre-creation and post-creation, right? So yes, that itself is a measurement of change, which is time. I cannot deny that, right? Okay, and the theological position of William Lane Craig, of even famous philosophers like Al-Ghazali, right, is that this was, right, spontaneous, right? It was a spontaneous creation that existed, right? Now,
no, that doesn't comport with an omniscient, omnipotent entity.
Let me tell you. Okay, wait, can you let me finish?
It's still Cloudy. It still doesn't work because now you're putting the creation of time before creation. which
No, I'm not. I'm
is
saying he entered into
already a
time
sequence again.
spontaneously with creation. If you listen to me, let me
No,
finish.
no,
maybe
because
you
if
don't
God is
understand.
omniscient, it
Hey
can't be
guys,
no,
guys, let's
because
back.
God,
Hey guys, we're dogpiling him. Can we back up a second and maybe
no,
let
but he keeps making assertions that he keeps contradicting himself on.
I'm not.
If
You
God
don't
is
let me-
omniscient by definition, which you have defined God as knowing all true propositions, then there cannot be any spontaneity.
Can you
God
first
would have knowledge, would have infallible knowledge of the creation point before the creation point.
Look, Jill, I respect your passion, right? But can you let me explain my assertions before saying that I'm only making assertions? So let me explain them, and then after that, I would respect you addressing my argument. I think that's the
Sure,
best way
go
to
ahead.
conduct it. Great. Okay.
Explain.
Okay. So when I say, right, that God spontaneously he spontaneously entered into time with creation, that itself is a temporal change. But the thoughts preceding that, sans creation, right, are not temporal at all, right? Those are all necessary thoughts, yes, okay? And there's no sequential order of his thoughts. There's no like, okay, I think this, and now I think this. That would be a measurement of change, which is time. So so when we have creation existing, right, that itself, pre-creation and post-creation, right, that specific event, right, is a measurement of change, right, and spontaneously, right, God entered into time, right, along with that. So he entered into time spontaneously when the universe was instantiated. There's no logical contradiction with that, and I would like you to prove that rather than you making an assertion that it is logically contradictory. Go ahead.
There is no pre and post if there is no time.
And there is no spontaneity if the entity is defined. If the entity is defined as omniscient, then there is no spontaneous action.
Use the word sans. I say without the universe, not pre.
And if the entity is omniscient, if the entity knows all true propositions as you define it, then there is no spontaneous action because it knows exactly at what point it is doing this, and it knew it before it did it.
Okay, sure. And
which also required time.
No, it did not. Okay, no, it does not. Knowing
yes, it does. Yes, it does. If you know you're going to do something before you do it, if you know you're going to do something before you do it, that requires a temporal change.
So knowing that I'm going, okay, if God has like thoughts, right? Okay, that are not going in sequential order, not following time, right? If there's a thought that he is going to create the universe, right? That thought does not require time. The only thing that requires time is the instantiation of the universe.
The thought doesn't. So Cloudy, listen. The thought that maybe not requires time, but there's a sequence between thinking about creating something and then creating something.
No, there's not.
Or
it is if God existed.
No,
it is if God has existed has never not existed. If God has never not existed, then you are creating the temporal state there, because that means that there is a point where God exists and there is no creation and God is independent and there's nothing else. And there's a point where God exists and there is creation, which is then contingent upon God. Sure. Which you're already invoking a temporal change right there.
No, I'm not denying that. I'm invoking a temporal change with the instantiation of the universe. I'm not denying that. Wait, listen.
Which means that God's thoughts are not. Which means that God's mind is not quiescent. It means God has a sequence of thoughts.
No, that
the thought before.
How does that entail that in any way? Please explain.
Because the thought before creation, and then the act of creation.
It's timelessness. It's sans creation. Again, you're using before, so you can be deceptive and say that God exists.
I'm not being deceptive. I'm saying that you're operating off of a definition that nobody accepts.
That nobody accepts of what? Of a mind?
Yes.
Okay,
what you are using as a mind is not a mind by definition.
Okay, of what
you are defining God completely out of existence is what you're doing.
No, I'm not. Oh my God. Okay, I'm saying that sans creation. Look, you claim that I'm making assertions without evidence, but literally all you've been doing is making assertions this whole time.
No, we're not. We're pointing out the logical We're pointing out the logical contradictions in your argument, Cloudy.
You've literally not. Okay, let me explain this for like the 10th billionth time.
Okay,
right?
I'm done with it.
Does anyone else want to?
Cloudy. Was there a point where there was only God and no creation?
Sans creation, so without creation, yes, God existed.
I'm asking a simple yes or no question. Was there a point where there was only God and no creation?
Yes, but by point, if you mean a point in time, then no. But yes, there was with sans creation, God existed only. Yes.
not a point in time. So at
point in
this
time.
specific point, there was both a creation and no creation.
At this specific point, was there no creation and what? Repeat that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying. I'm
No,
trying to
repeat that.
hold
I didn't
the
hear you
mirror in
properly.
front of
I didn't
you.
hear you
Okay, so you say that there's no time, and there was a point where there was no creation, not a temporal point, just a point. If there is no time, then at that same point there is creation and no creation.
That's not
Just
what
use
I
a
said.
different definition of time. So use time to measure something different, like the existence of God, like somewhere along the duration of the existence of the God, maybe, and then you can use time, right? I think.
There is no point in sans creation. There's no point in anything because all God is what God is sans creation is necessary. Is
Yeah.
just necessary thoughts. It's all necessary. He
Yeah,
enters into time
and so
with the creation of the
okay,
universe.
when God is sans creation and when God is with creation,
Mhm.
how can that happen if there is no time in between the two?
Because again, I explained this again. So that when the instantiation of the universe happens, let me repeat this again. Right. So with the instantiation of the universe, right, which is a measurement of change, right, post creation, pre creation, that is.
We're
a
not
measurement.
talking about the instantiation. We're looking
What are you
from
talking about?
God's point of view. No, I'm trying to help you here. We're looking from God's point of view, not from creation's point of view, from God's point of view.
No problem. So what can you repeat? Then what do you mean God's point of view? What's your argument?
Explain how there can be pre-creation and post-creation without time.
Easy.
From God's point of view, how does this work?
Okay, I'm great question. I've answered a lot, but this time, can you listen to me and have an open mind this time? Don't try to refute me. That would be really appreciated. Let me explain. Right.
I'm having an open mind, which is why I'm asking the question.
That's great. So let me explain it to you. Right. So without the universe, right, and the reason I use sans creation and not before, right, is because time was instantiated as the universe. Time is not eternal. It does not eternally exist, right? So from God's point of view, right, is before creation. So I don't want to use before. Sans creation, right? God has a lot necessary thoughts that don't go in sequential order. Now you can say that's not a mind. You can say that is a mind. Okay, but this is my position of God. You have to prove it's a logical contradiction, right? Okay. So sans creation, God has a lot of necessary thoughts, right? All of his thoughts, right, and his attributes are all necessary.
Can you please stop talking about thoughts?
No, and
I've asked you a specific question. I've asked you listen. I've asked you a specific question.
Answer the question.
There was no creation, and there is creation, right?
Yes.
Two different things.
Yes.
God, no creation. God, creation.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And there's no time, and there's no time.
Before creation, there's no time, but within listen to me.
Listen. I'm not going to progress into creation. I'm just addressing the point where there is no creation and there is creation.
Sure.
Those two things you say happened.
Yes, and they require time. Yes.
Correct? Okay. If there is no time, then creation has existed as long as your God has existed, because there's no time.
You're saying that you're presupposing that existence requires time. Can you prove that?
I'm not. Existence requires time. I'm not talking about existence. I'm using your words. Creation. No creation and creation.
Yes.
If there's no time for no creation to exist,
I mean, there's no.
Then no creation and creation have existed for the exact same time, and your God has existed for the exact same time.
Look, God has existed. Look, this is a flawed line of questioning. I'll point out why. Right? Is existence can occur. Existence. So God exists sans creation, regardless of time. He's outside of time. Right? So existence is before time. Right? Okay.
Mhm.
So you
basically what you're saying. Basically what you're saying. I'm trying to reflecting back to you. Basically, what you're saying is God existed for no time. That's the equivalent of non-existence.
That's not what I'm saying. For God existed for no time that's not what it is.
That is what you're saying.
God
You're saying
exists out of time.
That is what you're saying.
Cloudy, because you're saying God existed atemporally.
Atemporally means
if
out
something
of time.
exists, if something
if it's outside of time, there is no time.
No time.
Sure. But it exists outside of time.
It doesn't exist.
Okay, so that's atemporal.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
So God existed for no time?
God existed out of time, yeah.
For no time.
Again, you're using time so deceptively. He did not.
No, I'm not using time deceptively.
When we say that, you didn't exist for, he didn't do this anytime. Like when we're talking casually. Yes,
I think we should move on because this is getting us nowhere. I think we should move on,
yes,
and
this
I
proprietary definition
really want to hear an answer to JL's question: how did God create?
Yes, I still want to hear the mechanistic explanation.
No problem. Can I explain?
Yeah, you said
and then
you knew.
Reject it after I'm done with my explanation.
Yes. Give us the mechanistic explanation of how God did it.
Okay, so you won't interrupt me during my explanation. Okay.
The floor is yours, Cloudy.
Do we have to say it 4 times?
Okay, no. I will explain it. Just please.
We want the answer.
Let me explain to you the answer. Right? Okay. Is sans creation, right? Without creation, okay? God existed atemporally, right? He did not exist in time.
Let's
right?
drop the atemporal. Get to the mechanism God used.
This is preceding. I need to explain this to explain the mechanism, and yet you said you won't interrupt me. Yet you're constantly interrupting me, and you're presupposing my argument.
Okay. Both of you stop. Cloudy, go. The floor is yours. Peter, quiet for a moment. Let him explain this because I'm not convinced at all. Just so you know, but I'm listening.
Yeah, Cloudy, go for it now. Just to clarify, Cloudy, the atemporal like that does not matter. We're looking for the mechanistic explanation of how God did it.
Sure, no, but for the mechanistic explanation, I need to explain atemporal briefly. I'll try to wrap it up. You'll get it once.
Okay, floor is yours. Go for it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so God exists atemporally, right? Meaning that all his thoughts are necessary, and it doesn't progress in time, right? So God doesn't think something now, and then 2 minutes later he thinks of something else, right? All God is at this point is there's no state of affairs. It's a static being, right, with all necessary thoughts and necessary attributes, right? Sans creation. So now he enters into time, right, with the instantiation of the universe, right? Okay. And so when you instantiate the universe, right, he creates time and spontaneously enters into time with the creation of the universe. And that's how he enters into time, right?
Just said he did it.
Hey, hang on. Keep going, Cloudy, because you still haven't gotten to a mechanistic explanation, but keep going.
What do you mean by that? Okay, can you explain what mechanistic explanation you're looking for? Because my mechanistic explanation,
the mechanism God used to create time.
The mechanism God used to create time?
Yes. Because Cloudy. Cloudy. God did it or God magicked it is not a mechanistic explanation.
Okay.
In fact, it's not even an explanation at all.
No, I know.
So I'm asking you for the mechanistic explanation of creation. Go for it.
Okay, when you said the mechanistic explanation, I was concerned because we were talking about the topic of that God existed for the same time as his creation.
No, that's the whole point. That's why you got interrupted before, is because the state of God's existence before creation has nothing to do with this.
Okay,
the whole point is by what mechanism did God create everything?
He created it. He created it through his essence. He created it through his actions.
So he magicked it. So you're saying he magicked it?
He magicked it. When you do something, is that magic?
No, but when I do something, there's a mechanistic explanation for what I do.
Yeah.
So we're asking for the mechanism. So Cloudy. So hang on a sec. So Cloudy, what this goes back to is this: if I have two explanations for a phenomena, one provides a mechanistic explanation for that phenomena, the other one does not. Why would I choose the one that doesn't to understand the phenomena?
JL, really quick, I'll address that point. But if you believe that, then you should wholeheartedly accept the contingency argument. And
No,
what TJump said is that we
I don't need to, and that's
explanation.
already been Cloudy. I do not need to because it's already been explained why it's not logically contradictory. Okay, so please answer the question.
But then it just magicked it, so the explanation was magicked. Is that what you're saying?
Is that your explanation? Is that
No,
is that your
I'm not
explanation?
saying, but by your logic, if a brute fact has no explanation, then it's magic.
Okay. Let me roll.
Fine,
Let me roll with this.
Okay, let me address your question.
What
That's
is
basically what it is.
Cloudy? What's the
Magic is an
mechanism
explanation,
used-
so-
used?
Magic is what?
What's the
Sorry?
mechanism?
Magic is an
used
explanation.
for
He
magic?
said instantiated, or I hope I'm saying that word right, but that's the term that he used. That was the mechanism. That's why when you're asking him for the mechanism, he's like, "What? I provided it." But all that means is that God created it when you say that. But
I think it's
you're
more like
How did you create it?
It's
you're
not-
just saying
I
it
think,
created
I
it.
think
a
it's more like
mechanism.
God thought poofed it. God thought poofed it into existence.
That's what I'm
No.
talking about. And
Yeah,
God
it's not-
thought poofed it. It is not
It's
sufficient.
divinitis, basically. That's
Is
the
not a
design.
mechanism. It's
Yes, okay,
not a
can I explain? You know
mechanism.
what
It doesn't
activinitis is?
explain anything. It doesn't
Peter,
explain
Peter.
anything.
You know what activinitis is?
Cloudy.
Say again?
It does
Wait, JL,
the mechanism you're using doesn't explain anything.
No, I know. I'm not saying instantiation was the mechanism.
Okay, so I'm
You're
asking you.
misunderstanding your question.
So I'm asking you, if there is no explanation on one side and an explanation on the other side, and the God offers no explanation and the other side does offer an explanation, why would I accept the God one?
Because the God does offer an explanation. I can tell you why. So
You just said he
explanation-
you just said he magicked it.
I didn't say that. I said by your. No.
We've been waiting for that answer from the
Okay, no,
moment
the
JL
reason
asked
that-
you,
the
which was about a half an hour ago.
The reason I kept on saying instantiation is because I assumed that you guys were talking about the same thing when it was post-creation, pre-creation. But if you're
Okay.
not talking about the same thing, right?
We've got to move on. We have a few more people in queue.
Can I
I'm
quickly
going to
answer
give
your
you
question?
like 4 minutes to provide the mechanism that God used to substantiate reality, or however you want to phrase that.
Yeah, sure.
It's all
So
you. You got a few minutes.
It's ex divinitis, right? Meaning that the instantiation of the basic, construction or creation of a single thing, right, is based on his will. So if God says be, then it is. Yes.
How's that a mechanism?
not an
That's
explanation at all.
because you have things that are ex nihilo, you have things that are ex materia, and this is ex divinitis.
We know that is what you think.
Yeah, it's
but
appeal
how
to,
is this
it's
a
appeal to divinity. It's
mechanism?
appeal to divinity, and it
Hot
doesn't.
poofing.
Sorry.
Okay, then I'd have to go back, and then we have to. Okay, JL, can I ask you a quick question too?
Shoot.
Okay, so you're a methodological naturalist, correct?
Yes.
You would agree with an infinite regress in time, right?
Yes, it is possible.
Okay. So you'd say under the A theory of time, would you say it's possible, or under the B theory, or both?
B theory.
Okay, can you explain the B theory of time briefly?
This has been explained in the previous with the previous dude that we
I know,
were with
but
for
I
like
just
an
want
hour.
like a brief explanation, like a short explanation.
That
as best as you
that present, that past, present, and future all exist.
Okay. Do you believe in free will?
That's a more complicated question. I think that there's evidence for free will and there's evidence against free will. So
Okay. No, but
because our actions are defined by the information we have prior to that. So we don't really have free will, but we can still choose. So it's kind of like I kind of go with the Hitchens explanation of that. We have free will because we have no choice not to.
Okay, sure, no problem. No, but basically what your position would entail, right, is if past, present, and future all exist, right, regardless of our point in time, or whether what we perceive as our point in time, right, it would mean that it would logically entail that there's no free will that we have. For example, if I could pick up a phone, or if I could not pick up a phone that I have right next to me, right? The fact is, if the future exists already, right, then that would mean that in the future I already picked up the phone, regardless of my point in time and my perception.
Congratulations, you get Calvinism.
I'm saying your position entails that we have no free will.
From one perspective, yes. I don't think we have all the information, but it could. I mean, it could entail, like I said, we could have free will because we have no choice to.
But did you see the logical entailment of?
It doesn't
your
matter. There's
position?
no logical contradiction in us not having free
No
will.
logical contradiction. I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there is. I'm
Okay,
just saying
so
that it logically
your point?
entails that there's no. So I'm saying that it would be logically contradictory if you hold to free will. So if we believe that you have free will of some sort, then that would contradict your position.
Well, if you're asking me if I hold to libertarian free will, no, I don't.
I know. Even if you hold to compatibilism, you'd have to hold hard determinism. Review.
There's evidence either way. I'm kind of undecided on that. But then again, it doesn't matter because I don't have infallible knowledge of the future. So from my perspective, I have free will. And until that perspective is able to be changed, I have no reason to change my perspective.
That's great. I understand that. But your position of saying that the past, present, and future exist regardless of our perception in time, if they just exist, that would entail, right, that there's no free will. Because, for example, if I pick up something, right, that future moment already exists, right, of the implications of me picking it up, regardless before I picked it up or not. So that would mean, right, that there was no free will. There was no action of me deciding if the future already necessarily exists.
So?
Cloudy, can I ask you a question? If you
no, Peter, I'm trying to understand where he's going with this.
He's trying to say because free will is true, but free will isn't true.
I'm saying that's what your position entails. So if you hold to hard determinism, your position is it's not logically contradictory. Just that you would have to hold to hard determinism. If you hold to free will or compatibilism, then it would be logically contradictory.
I don't have a question.
I don't think you can pigeonhole me like that, but
I'm not pigeonholing you. I just gave you
no, like as a hard determinist, because I'm not a hard determinist.
Okay, then your position is contradictory.
No, it's not. I'm going off what I have evidence of, and I'm going off of that. I can't make determinations based upon what I don't know.
Okay.
So because there's information I don't have, and there's information that is not accessible to me and will never be accessible to me, a la the halting problem or Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So there is information that's not available to me. I can only work with what I have. And while there's evidence towards determinism and there's evidence towards free will, there's evidence for both. I can simply say I can only make decisions based upon what I priorly know, but I don't know all the potential outcomes of that and what my decisions will be after that fact. But I will decide in the moment, which means I have free will because I perceive that I have free will.
Okay. But do the implications of your decisions exist in the future? Do they exist?
Cloudy, I think we're off topic now, and we're past 25, which is where I had given you to. We've got a few people in queue. If you want to raise your hand, we can, and we have time at the end. We can bring you back up, but we need to bring up some other people who've been waiting for a while. We do appreciate you coming up. It was a good conversation. But feel free to raise your hand.
Your question, if that's okay, though.
Thanks, Cloudy Kite. I just want to let you know there's lots of people in the text chats on YouTube and Discord cheering for you.
Mister, we appreciate you coming up. Philosophers is up next. He's quite the interesting fellow. Philosophers, you want to come up? Hello.
Hi. How are you?
So what would you like to talk to us about today?
Well, if we're talking about brute facts, that's not a satisfactory answer. I mean, if you're asking why things are the way that they are, God is a very satisfactory answer because he's personal. Why a lot of times
that's an emotional appeal.
Not just an emotional appeal, it's an appeal for a satisfactory answer. When we ask why, we're asking for an explanation that either justifies more exploration or says to the person that no more additional exploration is needed. How can you have that with a universe that has no mouth, no feelings, no explanatory power whatsoever? It's better with a God who can explain stuff to us and take us by the hand and help us out.
No, because the universe does have explanatory power. So
one sec, I have no idea what you're saying. Like exploration, like what does exploration have to do with a better explanation?
Well, if we're looking at a dead universe with no mouth and no feelings, there could be other explanations as to why an event is occurring that we don't know about, that the universe isn't telling us about. How will we ever know that we've done adequate enough exploration without a God with a mouth, feelings, and explanatory power to say, hey, keep exploring this way, or hey, stop exploring? I just don't see any way to solve that problem without a personal God to answer these why questions.
Well, that's because
Not understanding
in
the
our
problem.
it's because in our worldview it's not a problem, and you're just making an emotional appeal.
Can I try taking a crack? The fact that our universe is cold and unfeeling doesn't mean that we as humans should be cold and unfeeling. In fact, as the only agents that we are aware of on this blue and green planet, we should spend the one life that we know trying to be kind.
Well, the thing is, I mean, by natural principles, we say like comes from like. So if we're not cold and unfeeling and we have emotions, the question begged by natural principle is, where did those feelings come from? Are we going to say that they just emerged as brute facts out of the unfeeling universe? That's unnatural. In fact, that's supernatural, where something feeling, us, came from something unfeeling, the unfeeling universe with no mouth, no feelings, no personality. That's unsatisfactory.
There's no contradiction there, and your use of satisfactory is an emotional appeal. Yes, we have feelings. Those feelings come from our brains, and our brains are the product of natural process. Evolution, thank you. Yeah,
but that's not a brute fact. So you said that that's a brute fact. A brute fact is something that has no explanation. So emotions are not a brute fact.
Well, the thing is, I mean, that contradicts natural principles. By natural principles, we normally say like comes from like, a cat comes from a cat, a dog comes from a dog. Feelings would come from another personal agent.
So if you think there's some natural principle that says like comes from like, well, nothing in the early universe contained stars, planets, rivers, tornadoes, earthquakes, complex particles, oxygen, gold, uranium. None of those existed at the early universe. And so all of those things are different things that didn't come from the original stuff.
And
so all of pretty much everything we see is emergent combinations of the original stuff. Like emotions are an emergent combination. None of it was originally in the Big Bang. It's so nowhere in nature do we say like comes from like. That's not a thing.
This is why when theists use the term like the Big Bang created stuff, that's improper language usage. The Big Bang didn't create anything. Things that are a result of the sequence of events from the Big Bang, which is the initial point of our observability. So like one thing leads to another, one leads to another, but the Big Bang didn't create anything.
And I just want to say, I think we have a good understanding of where feelings came from as multicellular organisms, and it means that for 2 billion years, life had no spectrum, as far as we can tell, of feelings. Even with life, it was cold.
Yeah, emotions are a pretty recent development as far as the planet.
But the thing is, by natural principles, we normally say like comes from like. And if you're saying it just emerges, that's the same as saying anything can happen, which is an extremely unsatisfactory explanation. Where
no.
Are you just invoking emergent properties to just avoid an otherwise necessary explanation? I mean, it's just
physicist. That is unsatisfactory to you because you don't like it.
It is satisfactory to you because it's the only option other than God. It's just lazy scholarship and just really blasé. I mean, just saying it just emerges and happens, dumb. I mean, it's just lazy.
Let's go back to this like causes like thing. So that sounds a lot like a composition division fallacy to me. So like if I said water can only come from water, I mean, that would obviously make no sense, right? Because hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, neither of them are water. But when you combine them, you get water, right?
Supposedly, according to the theory, but we could go with other theories with that. I'm just trying to encapsulate what, if anything, natural means.
Water is H2O.
And according to natural principle, when we define something as natural, it's like coming from like, if you're talking about something natural versus something that's supernatural.
No, it's not. TJump just explained it. Water is literally H2O, but you separate those two. You have hydrogen and you have oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen separate are not water. The two of them together are water.
There are problems even with the atomic theory of water saying that it's hydrogen and oxygen. When they were doing their chemical studies, they were getting different ratios for hydrogen to oxygen. They were getting 100 to 1, 50 to 1. They were all over the place. Water may just be an indivisible elemental thing that's not necessarily hydrogen and oxygen. So even that theory is problematic. The point is, if we're going to define natural, it's like coming from like. So to break that natural circle that's going to last forever and be an infinite regression, you need something supernatural to step into the circle and jumpstart things like a god or something like that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. In physicists, you need to stop using theory when you're trying to use hypothesis. Okay? When you think theory, when we say theory, think explanatory model. And when we say hypothesis, think educated guess. Okay.
Okay. Well,
you're using those terms incorrectly. That's first and foremost the problem.
Okay, you're trying to come up.
There's no theory regarding the chemical formation of water, which is H2O.
Well, if we're
2 parts
talking about
hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, that is water.
So maybe we should use a different example that's not as complicated as water, because water is fairly complicated. So if I take a beaker of water and put in like magnesium sulfate and let it cool, crystals are going to start to form. Now, magnesium sulfate and water aren't crystals. So crystals are coming from non-crystals, right?
Crystals would just be the magnesium sulfate. It's just magnesium sulfate, forming in a different way. That's just structure. That's just a structure, though.
So you understand chemistry as well as you understand physics. Okay, gotcha.
So the only way to break natural circles like this, where we say something comes from something else with similar causative power and similar ability to create the thing, aka humans coming from other humans, and to break the infinite regression for a theist and philosophically appears to be something from outside of the natural circle, something supernatural in the category of God, or something that at least breaks this natural stuff where like comes from like.
No, again, it's competition division fallacy. You're making a competition division fallacy, and I'm trying to walk through this. So let's go even simpler example. A brick. No brick is a wall, right? If you add a whole bunch of bricks together, you can build a wall, right?
But aren't you making like a fallacy of a category, or like a category fallacy or something? You're saying that the crystal exists in the magnesium sulfate example from the micro, level to the macro level. We think of the ultimate stuff that's there, the thing that's essentially there being magnesium sulfate. The crystal is just a different structure of the same thing.
No,
so
the crystal is a result of the combination
crystals
of the water.
coming from crystals. We categorize it as what? Magnesium sulfate coming from magnesium sulfate in a different form. So aren't you kind of making a category error?
No.
Chemistry, they bond.
Using the structure of the thing with the thing itself.
It makes it. If you put two different chemicals together, the chemicals mix and create a new thing. 2 completely different chemicals, add them together, they fuse and make a new thing that was neither in either one of them.
So you're talking about the molecular mixing, making a new compound. Okay, that's fine, but the way that we define that thing is by its structure, not by its essence. Right. We say that the magnesium sulfate is not essentially magnesium sulfate. It has an essence that is deeper than magnesium and sulfate that can be broken apart into pure and pure constituents. So yet again, I'm going to have to call category error, where you're confusing the structure of a thing with the thing itself.
And it
goes,
emotion.
So
emotions.
You're making an emotional appeal.
No, not an emotional appeal.
Emotions are not a structure. What are you talking about?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are literally a structure in the brain. We can literally measure the structure in the brain, and we can mess with the structure in the brain. It's a structure in the brain. The crystals.
I think you're appealing to that as a materialist atheist, but you can't show me the structure of happiness, the chemical structure of sadness. I don't think you can show me.
Sure we can.
You said life comes from life. Is that true every time?
And one quick question.
Oh, I'll hand it over to Randolph.
Sorry,
and
just
then
one
answer that.
One quick question from our YouTube audience. It seems a little flippant, but it's from Kenat Hovand. It's asking, can you ask him if water is wet? Back to our regular program.
Well, wetness.
I have a better question. Synthesis. I have a better question. What TJump tried to explain with the magnesium sulfate and the water, you said it's just the same thing, but it's a different structure. How long can you breathe underwater? Because it's oxygen, right?
Yeah. How long can you breathe?
Breathe
underwater before drowning, a minute or two, maybe, if that, depending on whether I'm an Olympic swimmer, or 1 to 10 minutes.
Well, but
maybe longer if I've done different exercise, but usually like 1 to 10 minutes.
According to you, water is still oxygen and hydrogen. Right? There's no difference. So you should be able to breathe underwater because there's enough oxygen for you to breathe. right?
But chemistry resolves that contradiction by saying that there are necessary structures in place that either allow you to break
Hold on.
down that
What
water
you
in
said,
the
what
theory
you
and get the
said, no,
oxygen
no,
or
no, no,
not.
no.
And that's
No,
assuming
what
that
I'm
the
trying to
theory
point
about
out,
water being hydrogen and oxygen is even correct.
what you said, like comes from like. So if oxygen exists, hydrogen exists, and water exists, it's all like, because like comes from like. So you could be able to breathe under the water. See how your argument falls flat there? This is what TJump tried to explain with magnesium sulfate and water creating crystals. This is something new.
Well, TJump
Just
appeared
like
to be
water is
trying to say
something,
that something emerged.
just like water is not like oxygen, is not like hydrogen.
Physicist, we have an
like.
audience question for you, by the way.
Hold on, and even your own explanation, humans come from humans, you are not like your dad. Your dad is different. You're not like your mother. Your mother is different. Like doesn't come from like, because if that were the case, you would be a clone.
Well, if unlike can come from something else that's unlike it, then why are we even talking about natural principles? Why are we invoking naturalism? In that case, if unlike can come from unlike, then fine. We have a spiritual God that made physical stuff like you, me, and other stuff to square the circle. I mean, either way, it still counts. I'm just wondering what, if any, working definition of naturalism you have, other than the rejection of theism, spirit, and anything that goes back to God. What does naturalism mean when you say something is natural or supernatural?
Oh man,
no one
JL explained to you that we can go back to the Big Bang and we have an explanation for everything, pretty much everything we see.
So your explanation is unsatisfactory. It even has holes in it. There's problems even with the Big Bang model. They talk about the inability to form heavy elements. They talk about the fact that matter is not uniformly distributed throughout the universe. There's problems even with the Big Bang, and there's no person back there to witness it or even say if it's the case or not.
Hey, physicists, hang on.
Like comes from like.
I'm being dogpiled, and I'm not even getting a chance to get an explanation out. Shut up.
Physicists, if there was no witness,
Peter,
then how can you claim that a God created it?
Stop. Like comes from like is not a principle in any version of naturalism. That's something you made up.
Nope.
No version of naturalism.
Okay, then I could have been born from a unicorn. I could have been born from a horse. The reason why you reject that statement is because a horse is unlike a human, and it is unnatural for that level of causation to occur.
No, the reason I reject that is because the empirical evidence shows that isn't the case. Not because like comes from unlike. I don't care about like comes from unlike. That's not a principle in any version of naturalism. The reason I think you didn't come from a horse is because we have lots of empirical evidence that horses have different DNA and don't create humans.
And you have faith in that evidence, and you think that evidence is sufficient enough to declare that humans come from humans. So now that we're talking about faith, let's talk about faith in a deity that makes everything else possible. Great.
We're not talking about faith.
Physicists, it's not faith. Faith is not evidence-based.
I just want to put that evolution states that a human will always be a human, a horse will always be a horse, a shark will always be a shark. And so any type of creationist saying otherwise, they just don't understand evolution.
So then what is evolution saying that's not tautological? If a horse is going to be a horse, then why is evolution invoked to say that we went from amoeba to human?
Sure, and I just want to remind everyone there are amoeba in every single branch of life, single cell, unicell, plant, animal, and fungus. And I just want to also put that when are we going to stop being a mammal? Would you mind answering?
We're created by a designer that made us to be a human specifically in that mammal class. Evolution is crap. Far Eastern mysticism. Perfect. All is one.
Don't give me a
go from amoeba to human. So I believe in creationism with a creator that made things that can vary and adapt enough as humans to stay humans, but become adaptable humans, nothing more.
That's okay. Please don't answer like a politician. Please explain when we're stopped going to be mammals.
That's fantastic, physicist. That is a positive claim. Now demonstrate how you know it to be true.
I can demonstrate it by the paucity of logic, by the lack of logic within its internal premises. If evolution is necessary for one thing to become another thing, then what is a thing in of itself? Greg Bahnsen talked about this when he was alive back in the 90s. Evolution talks about infinite becoming but no being. If ultimately I'm an amoeba that evolved into a human, why am I human in the first place? The logical paucity of evolution disproves
Europeans, why are there Americans?
Physicists, we are human because we evolved into this state.
Mm-hmm.
It's far eastern.
And ask a simple question, physicist. You claimed earlier, physicist, you claimed earlier we cannot know any of this because there was no one there. And you now claim to know that God created. So you were there?
He was, and either I believe his account or I do not, as passed down and dictated to the prophet.
I don't care if he was
there. I was
I'm
not.
asking, who observed it?
God did. He made the freaking thing.
Who
and
else?
He dictated it
Who else? I mean, God can claim. God can just claim anything. According to you, someone has to have been there in order to observe it, in order for it to be true. So who, other than God, observed it? Because you're dismissing the Big Bang because humans weren't there to see it happen. So now, by that same standard, who was there to see your God creating?
Well, if you want to be technical about it, God is technically a Trinitarian.
I'm not technical about it. I'm using
God. So
your
technically,
rules, right?
There's at least 3 persons that are there. So you could talk to God the Father, God the Son, or God the Holy Ghost, and get a witness account that's much more appealing than witness account with the Big Bang and Trinitarian men like yourself looking into the past and making guesses.
Physicists, are those one God?
One God manifest as 3 persons.
Okay,
3
great.
witnesses.
So which human was there to observe God, the Holy Ghost, and the Son, the Father, the Holy Ghost, and the Son, creating anything? Because I'm using your standard, right? Okay,
yeah, but
so
you're
we can dismiss it. We can dismiss it. We can dismiss it for the exact same reason that you dismiss every field in science.
So you're going to get rid of the Big Bang with no witness you're going to get rid of creation with at least 3 witnesses,
there is
human or not,
no witness,
for a Big Bang with no
there
witnesses.
is no witness.
How is that
for
logical?
Creation.
No.
Exactly.
That is not logical.
There's no witness for creation.
Physicist, the issue
I need
is
a witness account from a God, an angel, from something. I need a witness account. And creation has that with the 3 persons of the Trinitarian God.
Hold on. Bring God here, whether it's the Father, the Holy Spirit, or the Son. I don't care. Bring him here and have him make a witness statement.
We have the prophets. We have the Bible that is more than sufficient. Even if God came here, if you're ignoring that witness, you wouldn't even believe him if he said it.
I'm sticking to your standards. The prophets weren't there at the moment of creation. Only God was. So only the Father, the Holy Spirit, or the Son, any of those can make a witness statement. Can you bring them here to make a witness statement? That'd be great.
No, but we have the prophets, we have the Bible, we have Jesus, we have sufficient evidence right there. If you're rejecting that sufficient evidence, that points to you being rebellious and not wanting to look at the evidence at all. So even if God can't hear you, wouldn't believe it.
Oh, come on. Okay, stop. Physicists, you are making assertions about our position that are not warranted. Okay, you're essentially all of your reasoning here is circular. There's no one there to witness creation. If your God exists, I can demonstrate how the Abrahamic God does not exist, but that's beside the point. So there was no human beings there. So you saying that there's no human beings there to witness the Big Bang, and then you can't not demonstrate there was any witness there to witness creation, the moment of creation. You're contradicting yourself in that respect. It doesn't matter. The point is, you are making positive claim after positive claim after positive claim. You positively claim that your God exists. You positively claim that you know it created things. You positively claim all these things. You predicate all of this on that it satisfies some explanation for you, when there is no satisfactory explanation there. God did it is not a satisfactory explanation. Okay? This is an emotional appeal that you are making. Now, I asked you, point blank, demonstrate how you know this to be true. And you have yet to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Broke him.
Oh, he got raptured.
You did break him.
Yep. You broke him.
Anything
JL.
emphasis?
You vicious guy, JL. You broke
I
him.
will point out that somebody in our YouTube audience, K. Nut Hoven again, is saying if he wants a witness account of the Big Bang, it is called deep space telemetry and cosmic background radiation. So that's a serious comment.
Yeah, I wanted to go there, but this just goes to show the lack of understanding of physics, the lack of understanding of cosmology, the lack of understanding of biology that he's operating.
Hang on. That's a little much, Physicist. Can I ask you a simple question from an audience member real quick?
Well, if he's got nothing, I'm assuming we're done with him.
No? All
Might
right.
be having technical issues.
I think he's having mic issues. I think his mic is broken.
Maybe try.
Or he's getting God.
So, Taco, let's let JL Warren finish what he's saying, and then maybe you can put the question forward.
Maybe try rejoining too while he's talking.
I'm assuming that we're done with that, but essentially he's just operating from either a willful ignorance of, because this is what's infuriating, is because all of this has been explained to physicists in the past, and he's been given the papers that document it, he's been given the evidence that hands it out. Like he says, evolution is crap. Evolution is demonstrable. We have both observed it in nature and in the laboratory. We have observed it happening within 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 80,000 generations. Evolution is an understood fact of reality. And then he turns around and calls it crap. Yes, it is, physicists. We have observed it in nature. We have observed
thousands of generations of bacteria, all they are bacteria. And if bacteria are more fecund and more reproducing than humankind, well, then if evolution isn't happening in bacteria in all these generations, then it's not happening with anybody else.
Yes,
that's
it
logical.
is. Yeah, no,
this is nothing but farming.
Physicists, evolution is Physicists, evolution evolution is occurring every time there is procreation taking place within a population. Evolution is occurring. Evolution doesn't occur to individual things. Evolution occurs in populations. This has been explained to you a number of times. If I have a population of 4 million dragonflies, and then by some evolutionary event, by some evolutionary pressure, that population is divided into 2 million and 2 million. And 2 million go north and 2 million go south. Okay? Over time, because of evolutionary pressures, certain traits will be positively selected for, some will be negatively selected for. And that results in morphological changes in those two populations until eventually the two can no longer breed with one another. And if enough morphological changes occur, then eventually you will not have one population will no longer resemble dragonflies anymore, but they are still genetically descended from them. Morphologically,
but that's the generation. That's not a new structure being created.
I just want to ask.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, physicists, because morphological changes can result in the creation of new structures, and can result in the loss of structures. This is where we get homologous structures from and vestigial structures from. This has all been explained to you, physicists, 100 times over. It is boring. And we're tired. We are tired of taking you to school on this every single time.
JL, let me explain one thing to physicists. He said bacteria are still bacteria. That sentence is exactly the same as saying animals are still animals. Does that mean that an elephant is exactly the same thing as a snake or a human?
Animals is still animals is a category that is useless for this level of discussion.
Which is exactly the same thing with bacteria.
Physicists.
No, evolution does not have an amoeba becoming a human beyond just a generalized animal class. Well, then what you're saying is tautological and meaningless.
Okay, everybody stop.
Physicists bounce. So here's the problem. Here's the problem in his reasoning. He is equating what we understand to be amoebas today as what existed 3 billion years ago. And that is where his failing is.
Mhm.
Amoebas that exist today are not what existed 3 billion years ago when abiogenesis took place. Okay? What we have today, these unicellular organisms, the very primordial essence of when abiogenesis occurred, is where life branched out from. It is a massive tree on which everything you observe today draws back to this one singular event. Okay? Amoebas, as they exist today, are not what is claimed to have existed 3 billion years ago. That's not how evolution works. That's not the way it goes down. Okay, humans didn't come from apes. Humans are apes, and we evolved alongside our taxonomically related relatives, which are the other taxa, the other genera, which are Pongo, Pan, and Gorilla, and Homo. We are the last remaining members of that genera. Okay, and that all goes back 14 million years to another common ancestor, and then those go back even further. Everything goes back in a tree. Okay, but saying this whole claim that human beings came from an amoeba, that is not what we claim. That is a misrepresentation of evolutionary biology and a misrepresentation of multiple fields. Okay, this has been explained to him 100 times before, and he keeps coming up just like Otangelo does, making the exact same arguments when they've been debunked 100 times over.
They all do that. So next.
That's just mean.
What's going on, Nephilim? How are you doing today, sir?
Muted.
You gotta unmute yourself.
Speaking of the person who, no, I'm not
I would try to
bring it up. I'm not going to bring it up.
There, you can try to rejoin if you want.
Okay, he left. Speaking of the guy who ran from a debate on evolution with me.
Gotta hit the unmute button, Neff.
He ran from everyone's debate, as far as I know.
Oh, he's server muted.
There's probably a reason for that.
Okay, so I guess we need to move on to the next person until that can be taken care of.
Let me get him on server muted.
In the meantime, why don't we bring up another guest and then we'll come back to Nephilim Free. We've got an audience who would like to hear that. I think Boomerstein was indicating in the live text chat that he's got something to augment what our previous guest just was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's a
say while they're
deist.
bringing that up that the reason he didn't answer why we will never be a mammal is because that would debunk creationism. We're always going to be a mammal. We're always going to be primates. We're always going to be humans. That will continue into the future because evolution is a force of nature and a fact.
Well, there may be a point where we lose attributes that technically define us as mammal, because at one point, when tetrapods were first walking, species like Tiktaalik were walking, that's not technically a mammal, but it had mammalian traits. Just like dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were technically combinations of birds and reptiles. And so they had both traits. It depends upon ectothermic or endothermic. These things can change over time depending upon the evolutionary pressures. So there may be a time, 10,000, 100,000, a million years in the future, if we haven't destroyed ourselves by then, that human beings don't look anything like what we are, and that there could be a predilection towards ectothermic responses in human beings that could result in our species becoming an ectothermic species. It just takes
the next speaker now.
Even in a billion years, we will still be a multi-cellular.
Next.
So I did invite up WizKid, I guess Whale. We'll go ahead and pull you up. What's going on, Whale?
Yo, what's going on? How you guys doing?
Pretty good. What have you got for us today?
Well, I see you guys up here every Sunday, and I know most Christians Sunday morning.
Okay, I just need to clarify. We're only up here every fortnight. That's every 2 weeks.
Every other Sunday we're here.
So how do you know God ain't trying to communicate to you on these other Sundays? How a cable company is hey, I'm going to be here around this time at this certain time.
Oh, this is a great question.
So he's trying to get in touch with me about my extended warranty?
What a lovely
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that's all I got. I thought I'd get like a good laugh out of you guys with that one.
Woohoo!
Thank you. That was a lovely question.
All right. Well, no, I enjoy hearing you guys talk every Sunday. I enjoy everyone up here. I love what you guys are doing. You can put me back down now.
I need to clarify every fortnight. And I'm just curious, are you theist or atheist? Or...
Before you go, Will, can I answer your question?
Yes, and I am. I don't even know what I am.
Yeah. No, God can't answer us on the other Sunday because he's outside of space and time.
Oh yeah, no, that
There are no
happens. Like
Sundays.
you got to like call the manager about that. I think that's like the Holy Spirit.
I don't know. I think he's. I think
there
he's busy
are no
helping-
Sundays where he is.
He's busy helping somebody find their car keys and neglecting the starving children in Africa.
and helping sportsmen and women win games.
Well, I see two more people down there with their hands waved. I was just coming up here joking. I let them come up and speak. They probably have something more serious than I do.
Thanks, Whale. It was great.
Thanks
Good to see you.
for
No
the
problem.
joke.
No problem.
It's always fun to keep it light.
Hello, Nephilim Free.
What's going on?
How goes it?
The giants are indeed free.
Mm-hmm.
Here breathing.
And most of them were
you got
created
for us?
on a forum that I was part of.
Also, if anybody wants to chat with us, feel free to queue up. We'll bring you up next or in order, obviously, but feel free to raise your hand. But what's going on today, Nephilim?
Oh, just having fun kicking atheist ideas around the yard.
Oh, what kind of ideas?
Well, like evolution, like,
I just explained evolution.
Materialism and stuff.
Oh, and could you turn up your microphone a little bit?
Oh, okay, I'll move it closer. Yeah, evolution, that's a nonsensical anti-science idea.
It's not. I just explained it.
It's disproved by 20th century science.
No, it's not.
Sure it is.
No, it's not.
It's
I literally just
DNA.
explained it. I literally just explained it to physicists.
The existence of DNA.
Neffy, do you have a link to the paper that disproved it?
Don't need a paper, just need the scientific facts.
No,
which is-
you need a paper. In science, you need a paper.
Obviously, if this was scientific fact, if this was scientific fact, it
Well,
would
you
have been
guys
reported
are
on.
talk over me, I see. Okay.
Obviously, if this was
Well, you have
scientific
the
fact,
courage
there
to
would have
allow
been
your
somebody who
interlocutors
reported on it,
to
and that would have been a
You'll have
published
something
article that you could
worthy
reference.
of listening to. When you can let somebody talk instead of pretending you want to hear them, you'll have something worth listening to.
Nephilim, you have no evidence to back up your claim.
So are you going to interrupt me endlessly every time I open my mouth, or you guys have any courage?
No, we asked you for evidence. You don't have any.
Okay. So I was trying to say something. So, and what I was saying is that the discovery of the properties of DNA by themselves have refuted evolution theory and shown that we haven't in fact a designer, because DNA is
They've confirmed evolution.
Algorithms and linguistics, and those things arise only from intelligence. Chemistry has no potential to create them.
There's
Yes, it
no
does.
algorithm
What do you think?
and
What do you think? What do you
linguistics
think the?
in DNA.
Hold on a sec, Peter. What do you think the Planet Simulator is doing over at McMaster University?
How does that? What are you saying? That proves that linguistics, algorithms, and prescriptive functional information can arise from pure chemistry?
No, these are emergent properties of a brain.
Okay, so you haven't. You have some argument against what I said?
Also, DNA arose naturally, so you
Yes.
would need a reason why it's intelligently designed.
Well, I just demonstrated it can't be.
It can't be what?
No,
You can't be intelligent
You
design. I
didn't
agree.
demonstrate it. You just claimed.
No,
Neffy, there's a difference between claiming something and providing evidence for your claim. Those are
I
two
did. I
different
told
things.
you the properties.
You're
of
in the
DNA.
business. You're in the business of claiming, and you're very good at claiming.
No,
You're
I
very
pointed out-
terrible at providing evidence for your claim.
No, I provided.
Which is why I asked.
explained that
Which
modern-
is why I asked you for the paper.
Okay, so I explained that modern science has discovered that DNA is a four-dimensional package of prescriptive functional information which operates algorithmically and linguistically.
A
and that
four-dimensional?
Those
Can you-
properties cannot be
Can
produced.
you link us? Can you
Can
link
you
us
not,
to
talk
that
over
discovery?
me?
I
Have
gotta
you
find.
any
I gotta
I'm
find
just
this paper.
curious.
Do you have any courage?
I'm curious.
When you have the courage
I'm
to
curious.
not talk over me, I'll
Nephilim.
have you'll have something worth listening to.
I'm just
I'll try
curious.
again.
Do you have a link
Try
to
again.
that discovery?
He's done. I'll try again. Okay, so
Yeah.
yes,
Do you
I
have
have.
a link to
I
that
have.
discovery?
Are you done? Okay, so Science Papers published this. It is published in the mainstream journals that DNA is
Where?
prescriptive functional information, algorithms, and linguistics.
Oh, he's
Where?
quoting from Creation Ministries
And
International.
therefore, no, mainstream science journals.
No,
like
no,
Nature.
this is creation.com.
Okay,
This is
No,
literally
mainstream
creation.com.
science
Link
journals
us,
like Nature.
Nephilim, link us to those discoveries.
Okay, so
Where can we find those? Where
Okay,
did you
here-
find them?
Okay, so I'll respond when you're ready.
There's one thing you didn't
Are you
explain
ready?
yet, because you said that these things can only come about by a mind. Is there a scientific paper that says processes of coding can only come about by a mind?
Endlessly appealing to authority is not going to help you if you can't discuss the subject without appealing to somebody else's ideas.
No, I'm
Can
asking
you-
you.
We're not
discuss
appealing
it?
to authority.
Can
We're
you-
asking
discuss
you
it?
for your
Okay, you
source.
guys-
Peter, one sec.
Are you
Neff,
ready
I'm
to
asking you.
have a
We're asking
discussion?
you
Peter,
for your
Peter, one sec.
source.
Peter, one sec. Neff, I'm asking you.
Are you
Why
able
do
to
you think
discuss things without
only?
talking over someone?
Neff, one sec. I'm asking you. Why
you
do you
can't.
think
Next time,
processes
try
can
that.
only? One sec. All right. So I wanted to hear like where. Why does he think that only processes that are from a mind can produce like patterns and language? Like he's asserted this, but I haven't heard him justify why he thinks that. Because Shannon information theory says we can get information just fine, natural stochastic processes.
So I just pulled up the article that he's reading from, and it's on creation.com, Creation Ministries International. And the title of it is The Four-Dimensional Human Genome Defies Naturalistic Explanations. So there is a lot of stuff here, and there is essentially going down to the conclusion, this is an argument from incredulity. And completely, it says nothing about abiogenesis. It just says that it cannot possibly be naturalistic. That's all that this is saying. Basically, it's, I claim the genome could not have arisen through known naturalistic processes. The evolutionist who wants to take up this challenge must give us a workable scenario, including the sorts of informational changes, an account of the amount of mutation necessary, and a description of the selective forces necessary, all within the proper time frame. So, essentially, the person who wrote this, and this article was written by Robert Carter, the person who wrote this is asking for what the Planet Simulator project at McMaster University is currently working on. That is literally the question that they are trying to currently answer. This takes time. But going down to the very, very bottom of this thing, like where are his sources and everything, references and notes, and all the references and notes go to other things in creation.com. So there are no papers that this article is connected to whatsoever. So this is literally creationism stuff.
Okay.
I
I thought I'd
just
try
want to
one
point
more
out
time.
that
I'd give you one more
DNA
chance.
No
is
over talking,
Allow
Nick.
somebody to have a discussion instead of talking.
Wait a minute. He's talking. Don't interrupt him. All right, JL, continue.
So that debunks this. So this article that he's quoting from creation.com has no reputable sources behind it. All of the sources that it's citing also come from creation.com, and at the very, very end of this whole thing, of this whole article, is literally just in the conclusion of this whole thing, which is a massive deal, is literally, I claim the genome could not have arisen through known naturalistic processes. There is no explanation as to why it is impossible. It's just saying, I claim it. So no, you're literally, no, Nephilim, you're literally citing an article I found in 30 seconds, like 10 seconds. Okay, you're citing an article in which it is literally just a claim and there is no evidence given. It's literally, this whole thing is literally an argument from incredulity.
Okay, so can I respond?
We've been having
Can I respond?
genes for 4.5 billion years, and we haven't had intelligent creations until the past million, and definitively past 100 to 200,000 years. And there you go, Neff, all yours.
So can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. So I didn't refer to anything in creation.com. I'm referring to papers published in mainstream science journals, including Nature. Okay. For example, the Karolinska Institute of Sweden, one of the world's foremost biomedical research facilities, states that the grammar in the human genomic language is more complex than that of any spoken human language, published in 2012. And I have other sources. So
So that
it's
doesn't
a
say
modern
anything about a
discovery
creator.
that DNA is in fact prescriptive functional information.
Now,
It
hang on a second,
operates
Nephilim. Let's look at the first
algorithmically.
ones. Nephilim.
It
Stop.
operates
Let's look at the first
algorithmically
claim.
and
Nephilim.
linguistically.
Let's look
And
at the first one.
those are
The first
properties
paper
that
you
can only
cited,
arise from intelligence.
Nephilim. The first paper you
You're
cited
talking over me
doesn't
again.
get you to a
I didn't
creator.
get
It's
to
simply
finish my
saying
sentence.
that genetics is complex.
I'll talk to you when you don't talk over me.
So Nephilim, you literally the first paper you cited is not evidence for your claim. It's literally just stating that genetics is very complex.
No, it's
That the combinations of
states,
GAT and GATC are very complex. That's it.
no,
And
no,
technically,
actually,
it's not a language. That's an abuse of language. Just like genetics, just like GATC is not a code. This
okay,
is an
so
abuse
that's
of
not what the
language.
papers say. The papers don't say what you say. They say that it is linguistic, that it's algorithms. I mean, and that it's that the linguistics of DNA, the grammar,
You have links to those
is
papers?
more complex than that of any spoken human language. That's what they actually state.
And remember,
Do you have links
complexity
to
is
those
not the
papers?
hallmark of design. So what Neff is presenting is basically why it's natural.
Wait,
And
Amy,
like Peter said, where's
Amy,
those
wait,
papers?
Amy,
Excellent point, Amy.
Amy, wait. Nephilim, do you have links to those papers you
I
just
can
cited?
I don't have a link, but I can tell you where to find it. The title of the paper is Complex Grammar of the Genomic Language, published in the journal Nature, November 9th, 2015, Karolinska Institute. They state, and I quote them, their analysis reveals that the grammar of the genetic code is much more complex than that of even the most complex human languages.
Yeah, and you see that in the summary of the paper that I just pulled up. Grammar is literally in quotations because they're not meaning grammar like language.
They don't use quotations.
I'm looking at it right now. I have it pulled up on my phone. The Karolinska Institute, November 9th, 2015. The Karolinska Institute. Okay, summary. The grammar of the human genetic code is more complex than that of even the most intricately constructed spoken languages in the world. Grammar in that first sentence is in quotation marks.
Excellent.
They are letting you know that it is not that it is not grammar like we think of grammar.
Then demonstrate it's not.
It's not. They're literally indicating it in the article. I have it pulled up right here.
Isn't. It's also prescriptive functional information that can't arise from nature anyway either.
That is a claim, and no, you can't back that up.
Well, sure. Information arises from information is knowledge conveyed from a sender to a receiver, employing the language agreed upon by both parties. That can't.
No,
be
you were
no.
Now you're applying information to two forms of information differently. No, because genetic information is not a form of communication. You're using the communication form of information in a genetic sense, and that is an abuse of language.
No,
you can't do that. That's just like calling genetic. It's like calling genetic code a code, like a computer code. That's an abuse of language.
And I just want to say, information is actually the translation of symbols. And so it doesn't need to be a conscious agent that does it. It's why you can just have a camera reading data and translating that into information to ship a box to a correct location.
Well, that's incorrect. What's been discovered is that DNA actually possesses these properties. I'll give you a citation from Abel and Trebers. They state, and I quote them, no matter how many bits of possible combination it has, there is no reason to call it information if it does not at least have the potential to produce something useful. What kind of information produces function? In computer science, we call it a program. Another name for software is an algorithm. No man-made program comes close to the technical brilliance of mycoplasmal genetic algorithms. Mycoplasmas are the smallest known organisms with the smallest genome to date. How was its genome and those of other living organisms programmed? End quote.
They weren't programmed. That's the problem, is that you're using terminology incorrectly.
Denial of 20th century science.
It's not a denial of 20th century science. It is a pointing out that you are abusing language when you do this.
No.
Okay, the two are not analogous. The two are not analogous, Nephilim. Nephilim, the two are not analogous, and you need to stop doing it.
No, I'm just pointing out what modern science has discovered about
No,
DNA.
you're not. You're abusing language. You're taking
again.
sources that abuse language.
You're talking over me again.
Yeah, you're absolutely. You're damn right. You're goddamn right. I'm going to talk over you, Nephilim, because
so then
you
you'd
are
have the courage to
abusing
debate
language
without
in order to make
talking
your
over
point.
someone. Something you say will be worth listening to.
Nephilim, you are abusing language to make your point. The
Can
two things
someone
are
else
not
have a
analogous.
discussion? Is there anyone else who can have an actual discussion?
Well, I just want to say that these papers aren't pointing in the direction of a god, and a
I didn't say they
complexity
were.
is not the hallmark of a god. So I want to know
Okay.
why you think we should believe in a god.
Okay. Well, that's a different subject. I didn't say the papers prove God. What they prove is that life has a designer. That's what they prove.
You
The
asked if
question
you wanted
today,
to have a
the question
conversation.
today is not whether
Nev-
or not life is designed. The question is, who is the designer? That's the only question left today.
Okay,
Because
if the question is who is the designer, then first we need to establish if the designer you propose actually exists. So
I'll have reasons to believe.
How can we get some evidence whether or not your exists? Because if he doesn't exist, he didn't design anything.
Yeah. So I do have reasons to believe that the biblical God is the designer.
I'm not asking for reasons for you to believe. I'm asking for evidence of your designer actually existing.
My reasons
Those
for
are two
believing
different
is the
things.
evidence. No, it is the evidence. That's my reasons for
No.
believing.
Your reason to believe and the fact that
following.
you believe is not evidence.
Okay, you're not
That
following
is a
along.
claim.
My reasons for believing is the evidence. Can you follow that? Do you
Yeah.
understand that statement?
What's your evidence?
Well, there's multiplicities of evidence. One is that the Bible proves itself to be the inspired word of God.
Why should we believe the Bible?
Because it has historical foreknowledge that goes far beyond what's
Right.
reasonable.
Why should we
Okay,
believe the
when you're
Bible?
able to allow me to speak without talking over me, you'll have something to say that that's worthy of me listening to it. Are you able to?
Okay, we're done with him.
I
So
just
he wants to be dishonest
want to
all day
know
long. I'm
because
sick and tired of his intellectual dishonesty, and I'm sick and tired of his nonsense. The conversation is old. We already know where that's going to go. That his reasoning is that he's using the Bible to prove the claims of the Bible, and it's like I said, there's no point in getting on that merry-go-round because it doesn't go anywhere.
And can I just point out that evolution versus creationism is a proxy war, because there is no evolution versus creationism. There is evolution because it's a fact, and you can either accept that fact as a theist or an atheist.
And the big point, the really important thing on that is that God, the existence of a God, and the truth of and the fact of evolution and the hypothesis of abiogenesis these are not mutually exclusive concepts. They're not. A God could exist, like a God or a deity or a deity could exist, and evolution could be the means by which it diversified life, and abiogenesis could be the means by which it created everything. So these are not mutually exclusive concepts. Okay? And his intellectual dishonesty and willful ignorance is just aggravating as hell.
Now to add to Amy's point, I often tell people, it's creationism versus abiogenesis.
That too.
True, yeah. It should be creationism versus abiogenesis, not creationism versus evolution.
Yeah, very different things. Yeah.
The YouTuber A Bit of Orange fell into that same trap, thinking that...
Well, wouldn't it be more like creationism versus, like, Big Bang cosmology?
Yeah, you could go all the way to you could go all the way back, I guess, like creating the universe.
So, Taco, that's also correct. It depends on what angle that, as J.L. Warren's is alluding to, that they're focusing on. So, if they're focused on life, then it's abiogenesis. If they're focusing on the creation of all of the universe, the cosmos, life, universe, and everything, then that would be the Big Bang. Or you can go even further back to the beginning of the cosmos, which, our universe is suspected to not necessarily be the same age as the cosmos. The cosmos could be a lot older, or we could be in the first universe in the cosmos. We don't know.
Right, and there's also a bunch of deistic concepts too, like necessity and that type of thing. Anyways, what's going on, Holy Relic?
Hi, hello. I want to talk to TJump specifically about something. Is that fine? Are you there, TJump?
What?
You have a fan.
We're getting
Yeah.
paid?
No, you're not getting paid. But I just have a question. This isn't an argument. I just want to clarify one point that you made.
Your mom.
Okay, that's a great answer. Okay, anyway, the point I'm trying to get at here is that you said that something along the lines of, if I can prove that there is another B theory of time, then that disproves that it necessarily is the case that it disproves the fact that it's necessarily the case that there can't be like a first cause type argument or whatever.
What? That was an infinite regress thing. It was like if it's logically possible that you can have a present moment and an infinite past, that disproves the fact that it's logically impossible to have an infinite regress.
Yeah, I have a question. So yeah, that is correct, but why? Just a personal question. Why in my life and like all observed human history have we not seen B theory of time? Doesn't it not seem like unlikely?
Why have we
Okay,
not
so
seen a theory of
why
what?
why have we not seen it enacted? So why is time seemingly sequential? Like why is it sequentially going from the past to the present seemingly?
Because that's the way it seems.
Because
What does
well,
that have to
technically,
do
because
with
we're
anything?
three.
My point is that I feel like it's more
perceive.
likely that a theory of
No,
time exists
technically, because we
we have.
perceive in the
It
third.
literally doesn't matter. Like the
we
point of
perceive
the
in the third
argument.
dimension.
Wait, hold up. It doesn't. The point of the argument wasn't that B theory of time was likely or the most likely. Like I don't accept the B theory of time. That wasn't the point of the argument. The point of the argument was is it logically possible to have a past infinite regression and a present moment? I don't accept the B theory of time either. So
I got it. So if would you accept that the A theory of time is the most likely to be true or no?
no, it's not. It's not the consensus in physics. I go with the consensus in physics, which is neither the A theory nor the B theory.
Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
See ya.
Awesome. And if anybody would like to come up, feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to have you come up here and chat with us. But do any of y'all have any comments on any of the guests we've had so far, or any other discussions that we've had so far?
Yeah, Nephilim, get good.
God,
Sorry.
Nephilim's fun.
He's just aggravating ever since he ran from the debate that I was supposed to have with him on evolution.
Hello, Viking Zek. Welcome.
What is up, my fellow Canadian brother? So, all I wanted to say is thank you to you guys in particular for lowering the intelligence of the entire Discord by bringing up Nephilim. That was amazing. My brain hurts.
You're welcome. Right? That was my idea. You are 100% welcome.
The combination of Nephilim and physicists, just outweighs like Otangelo by
Antithesis was definitely the first step. Yes, and it was the natural progression. The only thing worse would now to be bring up Mr. Batman, and that is not a suggestion. Please don't.
No, last encounter we had on here with him, he got into all kinds of bigotry that I ended up making some rather strong statements in response to. Nothing bad. It's just
Randolph had to make an executive decision. He had to make an executive decision in the only way a Canadian can.
Yeah, I handled it politely, but I stated very clearly that his ideas were not acceptable. It was anti-LGBTQ stuff, I believe, and anti-sexual orientation stuff.
What did he say that
handled as well?
What?
And what just happened?
I have no idea. He popped up and it said Vikings up here right now, so we don't need him up. So.
And now a God 420 just mysteriously appeared. Wow, this is an interesting stream. Okay, so Viking, did you have any ideas you wanted to present forward to us here?
Not really. Unfortunately, I'm pretty much in the same boat as the rest of this panel.
Oh, you're a fellow atheist. Well, hey, that's I'll make a note of that in the chat here, in the YouTube description.
I gotta tell you, it's like it's a total side note, but as far as like Canada goes, I am like in love with Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. I really am. I like that those coastal areas. I just like they're gorgeous, and I fell in love with those through various shows I've watched that shoot up there in those locations. But man, there's some gorgeous areas up there.
Honestly, out in Prince Edward Island, you have the most beautiful country, and you have the most beautiful pink roads, and you have the best potatoes anywhere in Canada.
He's calling for you, TJump. The best potatoes.
Yeah, so you'll find those areas are kind of quiet. They have, and they're quite nice for people who want to have a quiet life. If you're more inclined toward big city life, you'll enjoy Vancouver, BC, or Toronto, Ontario, and places like that a lot more.
It also came back full circle. We're talking about good old-fashioned potatoes. Boil and mash them, stick them in a stew.
Well, if I ever emigrate, which is looking more likely if I get the opportunity to do so. If I ever emigrate, if I try to get out of Gilead before it becomes Gilead, then I'm looking at Nova Scotia or Newfoundland because.
No. You want to go to the Okanagan?
Oh, really?
I'll say that flat out. The Okanagan is the best spot in Canada.
I have a question for the Canadians.
Uh-oh.
Prince Albert Island, is that a good place to get a piercing?
I don't think I've ever been to Prince Albert Island.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I thought someone mentioned it earlier.
Most guys only go once.
You mean Prince Edward Island?
Anyway.
I may have misheard.
So I'm thinking that we're probably close to the end here, unless somebody else wanted to join in and provide any perspective. Otherwise, we can go with our final thoughts, and I think we'd be happy to let our guest here give some final thoughts if that's the case. Viking Zach, did you have any final thoughts on our program today, on how various things went? Oh, there's somebody actually in the stream is wanting to raise their hand, but if you wanted to share some final thoughts about it before we end the stream.
Yeah, and if anybody else that's a theist thinks they can convince us that God exists, we're totally open ears. We want to be convinced. That's why we're here, but not happening really. What's going on, Angel?
As far as any final thoughts that I have, I think that J.L. Warren has pretty much demolished anybody who decided to come up here. I mean, especially the people with actual thoughts, although I'm not sure if you could call Nephilim or Cloudy any of those. But I did want to say, TJump, I am a huge fan of you. I love your reasoning methods. You're fantastic.
Thank you. Send me money or hot bonds.
I mean, I'll never be. I'm not going to say that. But Viking, did you happen to catch his debate against Darth Arianis?
I'm not sure if I caught Darth Arianis.
That was a good one. That was a really good one.
TJump did a debate moderated by Tom Rabbit, and he debated. And TJump, you debated Darth Arianis on whether or not you're an idiot.
Oh, that was like last night, wasn't it? I missed it. I was going to watch that.
It was so brilliant. You have to go watch it.
It was so good. It was like 2 nights ago. It was so good.
I just figured, how long are you going to extend the syllable no?
My opening is yes, I am an idiot. So
I'll say you took the positive position.
If I can interrupt, can I make my closing statements because something came up and I have to go.
Oh, okay, sure. And then just going to say, Viking Zach, thank you for joining us. We're going to move on to Angels Freeman just after Peter speaks. Thank you for joining us, Viking Zach.
Thank you, Viking.
Okay. I just wanted to say this is always a lot of fun, and today was something special. JL, thanks for the interaction with Cloudy. That probably made my day.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, I'll see all of you back in 2 weeks, I guess.
Take it easy, bud.
Yeah.
Send
Okay.
love, Peter.
Catch you guys later.
I'm actually supposed to debate Cloud.
Take care, Peter.
He wants to debate me on the existence of God, and I'm trying to get that set up with a moderator. now I'm kind of like, But anyway, Angels Freeman.
Yeah, just like to say it was nice to see Whale come up. He's always good fun. And Nephilim and physicists. Oh my word. Isn't that something?
We had a whale of a time.
This is a very, very fun group of guests today.
It's
I had fun. This was very fun.
Yeah.
So, Angels Freeman, did you have something for us?
I stopped arguing with Nephilim. Yeah. I've been hanging around on PNR for a while, and I've been talking with Nephilim and a few of the other people. And it was just so pleasant to see you guys hold Nephilim to it in a format where he didn't have a mute button just to tell you guys, just to try to mute you, because usually that's what he does. And once you start to get to a point where you're holding his feet to the fire, he'll just mute you. And, we've found sources before, brought him sources. Like, I guess my question is, how can you express to somebody like that you've already talked to them so many times, and unless they up their game, like JL said, like, be better. Like, I just don't know why they keep coming back with the same BS and never advance their arguments.
From
1999.
The only I could posit from this is that, I mean, you can posit it one of two ways. One is that they're being willfully ignorant. They actually do understand what we're trying to say to them, and they just willfully ignore it. It's like, nope, I'm just going to ignore all that, and that they're doing it on purpose. And the purpose, and the only reason they would do this is because they know that there are going to be people out there that they interact with who haven't acquired as much education on these things that they could potentially manipulate with this. They could say, "Oh, look at all this that I have," and then they can kind of overwhelm the less versed and manipulate them into believing their position. So, and they do this over and over, and I think that Nephilim personally, he does this because he knows he's going to get shut down, and it essentially makes him look like he's being persecuted. So it kind of fulfills the Christian persecution complex that he's got.
You're stealing my ideas, JL. Come on.
Right. So Nephilim will come up here, and he knows he's going to espouse his stuff. We know he's going to espouse his stuff. He knows we're going to debunk him. We know he's going to debunk him. But if he's like, no, you keep interrupting me, you won't let me talk like that. I'm a victim. I'm being victimized. I can't. You're suppressing the truth. And then he eventually acts such a fashion that he gets kicked. Then he can say, I was the victim. They wouldn't let me speak. And blah, 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 blah. And basically, it fulfills his Christian persecution complex, and then he can go and appeal that to other people and be like, the atheists, they just won't let you talk. And, it's just the big vicious circle there. That, or, he's a Poe, and he's just doing it for the lulz.
I think it's the lulz. Because he can't be that, I don't know what he's doing, but he's definitely not in the audience. He's already spoke, so he doesn't care to listen to anybody else. He could be busy. I don't know. But, it is the end.
The best way
I just
to
find
handle
it very disingenuous. Just very disingenuous, that's all.
Right.
The best way to handle guys like that is like a lawyer, just like J.L. Warren was kind of holding his feet to the fire. It's what they want to do to us. It's what people like Darth Dawkins want to try and do. And so the mechanism that you need to use is just simply the Socratic method. Ask questions about their own beliefs. Answer truthfully when they ask you questions, but it really should be a 1-for-1, and you should be trying to figure out why Nephilim Free thinks that giants are real. Because, once again, I love all theists out there, but that is ridiculous.
Well,
he linked to me.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
All those, like, I think they're from 2008, 2010, something like that. All those giant discovered articles and like Egypt and other places that were posted all over the internet. That's what he linked to me. He linked to me a couple of those when he told me that he believes in giants.
Yeah. Well,
the joke article, are fake.
Yeah, he's not interested in science. He's interested in filling his narrative to a way he feels comfortable. And then once he has a comfortable story, I think he just sticks to it. No need to change it. It works. Unfortunately,
I
it
still think
doesn't.
it's funny that he ran away from a debate from JL and then claimed that JL did it. That was funny.
Oh, that was hilarious. Yeah, that I forgot all about that. That's right. That's right.
I mean, I got to
Committee laid
read the
down
emails, so
gauntlet.
I know who's telling the truth there.
Yeah, he laid down the gauntlet, and then he backed
Ran
out.
away.
Yeah.
I
Well, it was
challenge you
very
to a
nice to see
duel,
you do that,
sir.
JL. Again, I would like to find a way to calmly, not, I don't want to hurt Nephilim. I guess I'm getting soft, but at the same time, it would be nice if he could up his game a little bit and be more honest when he doesn't know. It's just, even if he just said it seems this way to me, that it must be this way, I'd have a lot more respect for him than him just telling me it is that way. Right?
Agreed.
So I guess that's what I'm after. I'm after having the Christians be less confident in their assumptions, and I'm kind of curious how they can be so confident, like all in. And it's got to be some kind of brainwashing, self brainwashing. I don't know, but anyway, I'll just leave it there.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
I don't know
but
what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm
Dunning-Kruger effect.
And I'll attest. I will attest. Indoctrination goes deep. Goes like big time deep. I didn't realize how deep until I was on my path of deconversion, and because I was brought up in the faith, and at one point, you get that one moment where something just doesn't make sense, and then that elicits inquiry because my parents raised me to always ask if something doesn't suss out, always figure out why. And so this one thing popped up, one thing led to another, and then you go down the path, and eventually I was but when there were certain truths that I came to in my deconversion process where you're talking about like real existential issues, like existential dread, like I am fully responsible for my entire life, and I am fully responsible for determining my purpose and my value, and I'm fully responsible not only for my actions but also my inactions. That was a hard truth to swallow, and almost sent me running right back to religion, because religion alleviated me of that responsibility, because I could always say it's God's plan, or God moves in mysterious ways. So there's always an excuse there. But when I realized that this thing does not exist, therefore the responsibility for these things falls on me, both my action and my inaction. That's a hard responsibility to have to just drop in your lap. And so I didn't realize years later the indoctrination, how deep those roots run. And how, when things get scary or things get tough, your brain's like, oh, I don't want to deal. And then you just have to muscle your way through that. And recognize it. What I search for and what I hope is the one debate that I had with a theist. And this was the best debate I've ever had with a Christian. Is essentially his position was, I believe that there's a God. I know that it is irrational. I have no evidence to support its existence. I believe in this thing because it provides psychological utility for me. It makes me feel better about my place in the universe. I can't demonstrate the truth of it. It's something that just I derive value from, and therefore that's what it is. That's it. And he recognized the irrationality, that it wasn't rational. It was completely emotional, that there was no logical basis in it, and it's all good to go. And he was fine with that. And I was like, okay. That's intellectually honest. I can't argue against that. Because he was able to accept that. And if they could all be that way, that'd be fantastic.
We do have one other person raising their hand if we want to go to them before we end.
I was going to actually say something.
We actually already have Boomer Stein in here.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I've been waiting.
What do you want, Boomer?
Yeah, I don't like defending Cloudy, but I feel like I kind of have to, even though he's pushing ex nihilo, whatever the hell it's called.
Oh, the appeal to divinity?
No.
Because he was talking about ex divinity, he was saying that his explanation was out of God.
Okay, I'm definitely not defending him then. Okay,
ex divinity is it ex divinity is what he called it?
Okay, so I don't have to defend him. That's good.
Yeah, he was that was his explanation. It's out of God. God wills it, and therefore it is. So
you asked. So you asked for a mechanistic way of creation, correct?
Yeah, then like how out of God, how did the heavy elements form, and how did those come about, and then the planets the stars, and then galaxies, and then so on and so forth.
I think you can. So here's where it comes into just like what you think makes the most sense, because I feel like we've had this discussion before, and you said to me like you don't accept supernatural, but I mean, if you can apply personhood to the changing of energy, that is divinity. Because the way, like, even though, like, the way we perceive time is pretty weird, I think you can argue that energy changing is within time, and any, like, rate of change is time.
Right. But I don't see how you could apply personhood to, like, the first law.
That's not what I mean. I mean, the actual creation of, like, movement with energy and turning into the Big Bang could have actual personhood behind it.
Oh, you're
I
talking
think that
about
you can
like
argue
you're talking about like the deistic explanation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
that's what I
powerful
mean.
enough agent. Oh yeah, yeah.
I think that's a fair mechanistic perspective. It's not really helpful for Christians.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing I can reject it just because on its unfalsifiable properties.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, okay, we can assert that. That's fantastic. There's nothing to support it, so I'll
But
just
it's
reject.
the same either way. It's an equal
Right.
claim as saying nothing. That's
Gotcha.
I just think that's a fair. I don't know. I didn't think you disagree, but I think that is a mechanistic way it could happen.
I believe Cloudy was one of those that was defending the contingency argument.
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna be honest. I dipped halfway through Cloudy's because I had to go get gas.
I'm wary about debating the existence of God with him.
Mm.
Not that I can't
That's
defeat
fair.
it. The Abrahamic God is that's easy.
Yo, when did Cloudy's voice drop? Last time I was here, he sounded like he was like 12, and now he sounds like he's actually a teenager. It's weird.
Okay, I think we should probably try to stay on topic here.
Okay, I'll dip. I'm out.
That's it. The joke, because that was an inside. I'm sorry, Randolph. That's an inside joke from way back, like way back early PNR when we would hang out in counter apologetics and Cloudy would come in. So yeah. So.
Thank you for coming on, Boomer.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Boomerstein. Who's next here?
Thusness?
Thusness.
Thusness they came.
I bring Thusness up. So, hello, Thusness. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. What have you got for us today?
Yeah, hi. I'm just here to ask about the principle of sufficient reason. I remember in the discussion with Cloudy, it came up. I don't know if he was using it to bolster his creationism. I don't really, or theism. I don't really remember that discussion. But I remember the hosts were pretty opposed to the arguments of sufficient reason. So I'm just wondering as to what the arguments are against it, against the ability to invoke causes to explain like fundamental things. So, because it seemed like something the people were opposed to. So I'm not familiar with the argument against it.
Well, Quantum Foam sent me one of the technical arguments. You could ask him; he'll send you like the actual syllogism to yourself. I mean, to you, not Quantum. And I like to go with the brute facts. If brute facts are possible, the PSR is wrong, and I'm happy with that.
Can you give me like an example of a brute fact?
Or a universe with a potato, just a potato.
Wait, can you repeat yourself? So what did you say?
Universe with a potato. Possible world with nothing but a potato. Potato is a brute fact.
How did you know that? How could you possibly know? Or
I don't need to. I don't need to know anything. It's a hypothetical possible world. All I need to know is it's not a logical contradiction, and that makes it a possible world.
Wait, so how do you know that potato didn't come into becoming via previous causes? How do you know that it's brute?
Because it's a possible world I literally just imagined in my brain, which it isn't that.
So
if I made up the possible world where it's a potato that wasn't caused by anything prior, that's how I know it wasn't caused by anything prior, because it's the possible world I literally just imagined.
So thus, there's a universe, and in the universe there exists nothing but a potato. That's it. Is there a logical contradiction with this universe?
Well, I don't understand how this is relevant.
No, that's the whole point. There's no logical contradiction there, which means you can imagine it. And there's no logical contradiction, so that's all that it takes. You don't have to demonstrate it's actually a thing that exists. Although that'd be awesome if you could, but you don't have to. All you have to do is demonstrate that there is no logical contradiction in what you are proposing, and because there's no logical contradiction there, that's why. That's why I was asking. There's no logical contradiction about TJump's potato universe.
Okay. So in terms of like physics and like existential experience, do you think that the principle of sufficient reason is true?
You mean insofar as we can say the actions we see around us were caused by previous actions? Sure.
Yeah, I don't. Does the principle of a sufficient reason pertain to like random hypothetical possible worlds where there only exist potatoes? Like it doesn't. It just. Maybe I just haven't thought about it, but it just
depends which PSR you go for. If you're going for the PSR that says all contingent things must have some explanation or all events must have some explanation, yeah, even the logical possibility of one event not having an explanation would refute the PSR. If you're going for like a weak PSR or something, maybe not.
How do you know that the possible world with the potato does not have an explanation? Like, on what grounds are you negating?
Because I literally defined that possible world. So, possible worlds, just ways the world could be. One possible way the world could be: potato, uncaused, existing, only thing. That it's one of the possible worlds. I'm defining that one possible world is the one I'm speaking about. So, if it was created by something else, that's not the word I'm speaking about. I'm only speaking about the one where the potato is a brute fact and it wasn't caused by anything else.
Do you believe this possible world is like currently ontologically real in a latent
No,
sense?
I'm not a modal ontic realist.
Yeah, so I mean, the ontology of this possible world is founded or contingent on your thinking about it or entertaining its possibility. So it's not an uncaused plane or thing.
No, if there's no logical contradiction in it, then that means that it's possible, which means there's no logical contradiction. Therefore, PSR, one of the principles is false. Things that are contingent don't need a prior explanation. All it needs to be as logically possible. It doesn't need to be actually proven to be the case.
You just need to show how it's possible. That's it.
Wait, so what's the potato contingent on? Like, it just seems completely abstract and not related to anything. It doesn't seem contingent.
Contingent means could be otherwise. So it could be a tomato instead of a potato.
Oh,
It could be
okay.
an apple, watermelon.
Are you asking what is it dependent upon?
Well, what do you mean? Like what's
We're asking if it relied on something, right?
Well, yeah, like the ontology. Well, this guy says he doesn't believe in the ontology of the possible world, so I think that question would be kind of irrelevant, or not it wouldn't apply. But I think I misunderstood. Actually, I think it clears up the argument that these people were making, because I wasn't even familiar with the formal argument or the principle of sufficient reason. I don't really read like modern philosophy, so I just wasn't familiar.
Don't sweat it. Just if somebody ever brings up PSR, just say omni potato, and you've got them.
That works for every argument. Just potato.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, yeah. I mean, you cleared it up. I mean, I don't have any other further questions, I guess. Okay.
Thanks, Thesness.
See you. Bye.
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you, Thesness.
So TJump, is that going to be like our answers for everything they bring up? Just omni potato?
Should be. We should just have one day that that's the only answer we can give to any question. Great if Nephilim came that day. It'd be phenomenal.
Omni potato.
So Otangelo sent me a PM saying he had a previous conversation with TJump. Let me pull it back up. So last time I was talking about the genetic code, but I was interrupted by TJump. I think there's more to be debated about it. The genetic code is language, which in my view is strong evidence of design. I want to explore the topic a bit further. That's from Otangelo, so maybe he'll come up.
I'd rather not, because it's just an abusive language. It's an abusive
Oh yeah, for
word.
sure. For sure. Like when he said the genetic code is a language, 100%. That's an abusive language for sure.
Right.
All right. So we don't have anybody else in queue really. So I think we were planning on calling it a little bit early. If Tangelo wants to pop up, you're welcome to pop up. Does anybody have any closing words that hasn't already said their closing words?
Omni potato. I'm going to go take a nap. See you later.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
TJump.
I have links for everybody pinned in the Heathen Hangout chat. It's also on Randolph Richardson's YouTube and probably on jail. And I don't know who else has it all, but there's linking everybody. So make sure you click and follow everybody. Everyone here rocks.
Yep.
This is on the politics and religion Discord. So make sure you guys join it and hang out here. There's a lot of people that debate religion here, and there's some good and some bad and everywhere in between. So you'll fit in.
So Taco, we did cover some final thoughts, but I don't think we heard anything from J.L. Warren or Amy or myself yet. So yeah, go ahead, and then I guess I'll just close up because I can end the stream.
Cool.
Amy, feel free.
Sure. So thank you guys so very much. Just going to give a shout out to everyone out there in the chatosphere and the interwebs. A lovely shout out to James W., my co-host. I do a stream myself at the...
And his cat.
That's right. Gizmo is our producer, making sure that everything looks good. And so if you are an atheist, a theist, as long as you are friendly to skeptics, come on by and have some fun. And I just want to thank Randolph Richardson, Taco, TJump, JL Warren, Peter, the whole panel, and everyone that joined us tonight. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to having even more the next fortnight. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's great, Amy. Did you have any final thoughts about today's episode? Anything that really stood out to you?
Sure. The contingency argument I have been thinking about now for like a good half of year. I've become kind of obsessed because I don't understand what's going on here except for a preassumption that everything has to have a cause except on sale now, this special thing that breaks everything that just came out of my mouth like 5 seconds ago. I don't understand the complexity argument, because when you're actually designing things, we are looking for simplicity, and language tends to be either human-oriented, or it tends to be vary from one organism to another organism. DNA and self-replicating molecules are not doing the same thing that we're doing. They have ways of communicating with each other, both within themselves, short range and long range. Nonetheless, they are not going to speak Spanish. They are not going to do JavaScript, and thus they are not the same thing as the programming language or the language that are coming out of our mouths in the past 100 to 200,000 years, and really 200 years if we're talking about programming languages. And so natural came first, artificial after, cart before the horse. Sending so much love, because it was a great back and forth of ideas.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. J.L. Warren, what are your final thoughts on this? And then I have some.
We had some. Well, I want a huge thank you to Taco, to Randolph Richardson, Amy, to TJump, to Peter, to everybody that showed up on the panel, to all of our guys, or all of our people that weren't here, but it was awesome. I thought this was a really, really good stage. Had some good conversations there on morality, which was good, on addressing arguments from contingency. Also some bad ones, some on evolution and other things. But nonetheless, I thought it was a great opportunity to get information across to the audience, kind of maybe fill in some blanks where some people may not have known. But otherwise, I thought it was productive. I thought we had a good productive stage, and it's all we can really hope for every 2 weeks that we do this. So huge thank you to everybody. And of course, I'm currently live on my channel over at Bridge the Divide. It's youtube.com/JLWarren. If you want to pop over, if you like to hear me explain why the Abrahamic God does not exist, how it cannot exist, I can give that explanation over there. And we can move from there. Just something interesting that we're going to talk about. But other than that, feel free, like, subscribe if you like my content. I debunk woo as well as go after theist arguments and theist claims. So, but thank you all. This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Taco, did you have any final thing you want to say before I talk about the thing that stood out to me?
I enjoyed the majority of it, as always. There was some really good conversations. The first half was really good conversations, and then we had physicists, and we had Nephilim Free, who are always favorites of mine that came up. They were fiery and feisty as always, and I feel like we successfully were unsuccessfully convinced again, if that is proper phrasing, but that's all I got.
Well, that's great. For me, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in and joining in on our panel with us as guests to present their ideas. It's always fascinating to hear the different ideas that people have, because there's just so much diversity in our world. Now, near the beginning of the stream, I guess I fielded the first question and first challenge. And so I just wanted to kind of remind people to think about this. This is kind of a new idea for me that I came up with today, was that there's if there is such thing as objective morality, as our guest was talking about at the time, then things that are objective laws, like he talked about moral laws, that's the word he used. So if it's a moral law, I think it's reasonable to compare it with the law of physics or other natural laws. We can't break them. We can't break the laws of physics as far as we know. So if there's a moral law, the same should apply with that. We can't break that law. It's not possible, because it's an objective law, an emergent property of our universe of reality. So I feel that the point is that I feel that the whole idea of objective morality is self-defeating in a way on that, because there's people who are not following these objective moral laws that are being presented. The Christians have a whole variety of objective laws, and some of them think that things like abortion is a violation of these objective laws, where others are okay with it under certain circumstances, and so there's variation there. And then there's Muslims that have different ideas on moral laws, and Buddhists and Hindus, and the list goes on. All these different religions have these different ideals. And then the fact that there's different religions also already talks about how it kind of presents, I think, a reasonable doubt for why these laws aren't objective. But I think that this is kind of uncovering some new ground today when we're saying that it is we shouldn't be able to break these laws if they truly are objective moral laws. And yet we see many examples of them being, I guess, violated in a sense. I don't know if anybody wanted to add anything to this before we close the stream. Feel free if you do.
It was nice talking about contingency today and necessity, right? Like, that's always a fun conversation. Out of all the conversations I've had, I've never had anybody pull me off of physical necessity to necessary God or whatever.
Just comment on that, Randolph, what you said. These are, unfortunately, for the most part, proxy wars. These abortion, evolution, if they they would turn back gay marriage. And so you gotta stay vigilant. We gotta fight for a secular society and against religious extremists that would control our lives and everyone else's.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. We've already decided to close down the stream. I see there's a few people that want to join us, but we would be very, very happy to have you next time. We'll be on in a fortnight from now. That's 2 weeks from now, and we will be presenting that. That is, I'll just quickly check the calendar. Give me a sec. That will be August the 7th that our next session will be. So feel free to make some notes and bring forward some ideas and challenge us to start believing in your deity or convince us somehow. We're still, of course, open to this. And I think being open to these things is an important way to live our lives. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And again, we all really appreciate everybody taking such an interest in these conversations. Take care.
Thank you for coming, everyone. I can't close out the stage, so it's just going to have to.
And the convo will continue over on my channel. If anyone is interested, feel free. You can pop over. We're continuing it there. So, or like an after show. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for watching, everyone.
Thank you, y'all. Sending love.
Take care, JL.
Take it easy, Randolph.